Chapter 263. Body of the Thunder Dragon. Qin Yunzi's long saber finally returned to his hand. His expression seemed to have turned crazy. A formless fluctuation rippled out from his body, and dark purple flames appeared out of thin air. It was extremely strange, and these flames instantly fell onto the long saber in his hand, completely covering it. Long Chen's eyes suddenly shrank. This was the power of rule force. The elders of the 5 great sects were also slightly startled. They truly did not expect that in today's battle, Long Chen would actually force Qin Yunzi to use that trace of power of law. As the dark purple flames danced, even the void seemed to distort. Even Qin Yunzi's face was faintly pale. His right hand, which was holding the long blade, was trembling violently. The surrounding disciples of the 5 great sects retreated one after another, their faces filled with fear. They only felt that the dark purple flame was filled with boundless terror, and as long as they came into contact with a trace of it, they would lose their lives. Everyone couldn't help but glance at Long Chen before shaking their heads in pity. It had to be said that the combat prowess that Long Chen had displayed today was even greater than the day before. In everyone's hearts, he was comparable to the god of war. However, in the face of the terrifying power of the Tao integration stage, he was still somewhat powerless. Today, I will kill you. Along with Qin Yunzi's roar, the long saber in his hand slammed down. Streaks of dark purple flames burned fiercely in an instant. It was as if boundless flames were falling towards Long Chen with the long saber as the root. Purple flames filled the sky, and wherever they passed, the air would explode. Boom! Countless saber shadows accompanied by dark purple flames instantly covered the entire fighting ring, and Long Chen was instantly engulfed in it. Chi-chi. A melting sound was transmitted into everyone's ears. The entire battle platform disappeared, leaving only a bottomless black hole. The edges of the black hole were covered with dark purple flames, as if they were dancing ghost fire. Qin Yunzi breathed heavily as he stood in the air above the battle stage. He couldn't help but laugh wildly again. Haha, so what if you can use a divine-level sword art? So what if you are a peerless genius? You will still die in my hands today. Is he dead? The 100 Smelting Clan's leader's expression changed abruptly. He looked at the disappearing battle platform and said absent-mindedly, "He's still lost in the end. No matter how powerful a Return to Void stage cultivator is, how can he compare to a Tao integration stage super mighty figure who has already come into contact with the laws of Tao? Not to mention Return to Void initial stage, even Return to Void late stage cultivators would have no choice but to succumb to this attack." The disciples of the 5 major sects sighed endlessly, their faces filled with regret. Yi Hailan, Lui, and Yen Li's faces suddenly turned pale. They didn't know why, but they felt as if a knife was twisting in their hearts. On the other side, Jian Shisan and Marquis Fengqing's faces instantly turned cold and murderous. Crackle! However, at this moment, an ear-piercing sound of thunder resounded from the black hole where the battle stage had disappeared. Soon after, the light of lightning soared into the sky. A human-shaped demonic beast leaped out. This demonic beast was covered in silver-white scales, with a pair of wings on its back and a pair of horns with thunder patterns on its head. Its eyes seemed to be devoid of any emotion, only a white glow. Its long tail whistled through the air. Every time it moved, lightning would spread for dozens of meters. The scene was extremely shocking and terrifying. The most peculiar thing was that there was a third eye between its eyebrows. This third eye was hidden but not exposed. It was shaped like lightning, strange and unpredictable. This was the second incarnation of the Heavenly Clan, the 3-eyed lightning dragon. For a moment, countless pairs of eyes stared at this peculiar bloodline. Jian Shisan and the others immediately recognized that this was the power of Long Chen's bloodline. Although there were many differences between his appearance and the one in the Fire Seed mystic realm, there were still some faint similarities. The leaders of the 5 major sects stared blankly at Long Chen. Only now did they realize that the dark purple flames couldn't even get close to him. As the power of lightning pulsed, it was completely shattered. The sect leader of the Divine Vein sect was in a daze. He stared at Long Chen and murmured, "This is the power of bloodline. This person has an ancient bloodline. Judging from the power of lightning, this bloodline power is probably not inferior to the ancient families in the ancient desolation land up in the sky." Qin Yunzi's soft voice came to an abrupt halt. His eyes were filled with disbelief as he stared at Long Chen. He had never imagined that even a trace of the power of laws would be unable to do anything to Long Chen. Long Chen felt Qin Yunzi's gaze. The wings on his back, which were full of lightning patterns, flapped slowly and gradually flew toward Qin Yunzi. He said lightly, "This is your strength. It's a pity that you're still far from comprehending the power of rules. Today will be the day of your death." After Long Chen uttered the last word, he disappeared from his original spot, leaving behind only a streak of lightning that crackled incessantly. In the next moment, he appeared behind Qin Yunzi. As a Dao integration stage cultivator, Qin Yunzi's divine sense wasn't weak. He immediately slashed his saber backward and blocked Long Chen's sword. However, the tail of the saber, which was full of lightning, hit his back at the same time. Countless power of lightning instantly spread throughout Qin Yunzi's body, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. His body was blasted toward the ground like a cannonball rumble. Qin Yunzi rolled for hundreds of meters and left a deep mark at the foot of the hard mountain. However, before he could stabilize himself, Long Chen flapped his wings again. There was another burst of lightning and thunder. He instantly appeared behind Qin Yunzi again. His sword restrained Qin Yunzi's saber, and he kicked Qin Yunzi's body crack. Qin Yunzi was sent flying again, and the ear-piercing sound of his bones breaking could be heard. Bam, bam, bam. Under the gaze of tens of thousands of people, a Dao integration stage cultivator didn't have the slightest ability to fight back. He was crushed like a sandbag by Long Chen. The Dao integration stage elders of the 5 great sects all took a step back subconsciously. For some reason, they felt a chill in their hearts. Long Chen's speed and power had already reached an appalling level. After a short while, a person covered in blood and with dislocated bones appeared in front of everyone. This was Qin Yunzi. Being extremely disheveled was no longer enough to describe his current appearance. How is this possible? How can I lose to a return to void stage cultivator? This is impossible. Qin Yunzi seemed to have lost his soul, and he couldn't stop muttering to himself. As his voice fell, his entire body actually expanded rapidly. Streaks of spirit light rushed out from his limbs and bones. The expressions of the 5 great sects' sect leaders changed drastically. Streaks of spirit light enveloped the many disciples behind them. This Qin Yunzi was actually going to self-destruct. At the foot of the 100 refinement peak, countless disciples of the 5 great sects had already gathered. If he self-destructed now, there would be countless casualties. And Long Chen was the closest to him, so he would bear the brunt of it. Crackle. However, Long Chen suddenly disappeared from the spot. Lightning flashed on the sword in his hand, and when he reappeared, he was already standing behind Qin Yunzi. Qin Yunzi's body, which was originally about to self-destruct, was actually crushed into powder by the lightning with his dantian as the center. He couldn't be more dead. That vast and mighty spirit power also set off boundless wild gales that wreaked havoc, spreading throughout the sky above the disciples of the 5 great sections. Chapter 264. No going home without getting drunk. Qin Yunzi was dead. Not even his corpse was left behind. Only scorched ashes were left. A Dao integration stage mighty figure had been defeated by Changqin of the 100 Smelting Clan. Countless young disciples felt their blood boiling. The sect master of the Divine Vein sect flew to Long Chen's side. He looked at the disappearing scales on Long Chen's body. His eyes were filled with admiration. The sect master of the Divine Vein sect said in a deep voice, "The power of your bloodline has undergone a mutation. I don't know if you want to join the Divine Vein sect. Our Divine Vein sect has a unique advantage in nurturing the power of bloodline." Once these words were spoken, the 100 Smelting sect leader's eyes widened. He walked to Long Chen's side and coldly snorted, "Why didn't I see you having such thoughts before? What bloodline nurturing? You should know that Long Chen does not have the talent to become an emperor-stage alchemist." At this moment, even the sect master of the Wanjian sect walked over in front of everyone and said in a deep voice, "After all, the Wanjian sect focuses on alchemy with talismans. Although you have good talent in alchemy, it is still not the great way. As long as you are willing, the door of the Wanjian sect is always open to you." Seeing the 4 major sects quarreling over Long Chen, all the disciples of the 5 major sects were stunned. Each of them looked at the sect leader of the Godly Knife sect with a strange expression. The Godly Sword sect's patriarch's face turned ashen. He had never thought that Long Chen would be able to kill Qin Yunzi. Furthermore, he had revealed such a terrifying talent and heaven-defying combat strength. At this moment, what inheritance shackles, what relationships behind Qin Yunzi, were all thrown to the back of their mind. Long Chen was already the #1 genius of the younger generation of the 5 great sects, and he was definitely worthy of being called a monster. The sect leader of the Godly Saber clan felt the mocking gazes and finally said coldly, "The young master of the Li clan is about to arrive at the 5 major clans. He had an agreement with Qin Yunzi beforehand. Now that Qin Yunzi is dead, I'll see who among you dares to go against the Li clan." With that, the sect leader of the Godly Saber clan turned around and left with many disciples. The sect leaders of the 5 major sects frowned slightly when they heard this. They were also a little wary of the Li clan, but they didn't show it. The sect leader of the 100 Smelting sect leader, Long Chen, felt a little unnatural when he saw the enthusiasm of these people. He cupped his fists and said in a deep voice, "I appreciate your kindness. Since I am a disciple of the 100 Smelting sect, I will naturally stay in the 100 Smelting sect." Only then did they shake their heads and leave. The 100 Smelting clan's clan leader also revealed a smile on his face. "Let's go back to the cave abode first." Long Chen walked toward the cave abodes of the 100 Smelting Peak, surrounded by the crowd. The sect leader of the 100 Smelting sect directly handed him a pale gold waist token and said, "Go to the peak. From now on, you are a monster disciple of the 100 Smelting sect, and have all the privileges." All the privileges. The 100 Smelting sect disciples were envious. Even the people from the other clans were the same. Compared to the 5 major sects, the 100 Smelting sect had the most resources. All the privileges were activated, which meant endless resources. Just like that, Long Chen walked slowly to the peak of the 100 Smelting Peak amidst the cheers of countless disciples. On the other side, Yi Hailon had an extremely close relationship with Long Chen after the Fire Seed Secret Realm. Everyone saw it. This was big news. As the saintess of the 5 major sects, Yi Hailon had always been unapproachable. Almost no one was in her eyes. However, these days, she seemed to be very worried about Long Chen's duel with everyone. Now, she even followed everyone to the 100 Smelting sect. In the cave abode of the 100 Smelting sect, under the instructions of the sect leader of the 100 Smelting sect, more than 10 healing elixirs were sent to Long Chen's cave abode. Each of them was an emperor-level elixir and was extremely precious. Long Chen touched the thunder mark between his eyebrows, shook his head slightly, and smiled bitterly. He said to himself, "Although this 3-eyed thunder dragon can be activated, the huge amount of spiritual power required is something even I can't support. However, the strength of its combat power is not comparable to the previous 5-clawed golden dragon. Moreover, there is still a magical power that has not been used. If I use it, I should be able to fight with an ordinary early-stage Dao integration stage cultivator, after the five-clawed golden dragon, every transformation would awaken a magical power of the Dragon Clan. However, Long Chen knew that once these magical powers were used, he would also be greatly injured. After all, his current cultivation was too low. If his spiritual power was not far superior to those of the same level, he was afraid that he would not be able to use them at all. It was late at night. After taking several Emperor-level healing elixirs, Long Chen slowly recovered. After walking out of the cave abode, Jian Shisan and the others still did not leave. Seeing that Long Chen was fine, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Yi Hailan did not say a word. She turned and left the 100 smelting sect. Lu Yi asked playfully, "Little master, this beautiful sister has been waiting for so long. Why did you leave so soon?" Long Chen looked at Yi Hailan's back and shook his head slightly. However, he did not answer. Ao Sangqiong strode forward and said, "Brother Long Chen, I didn't expect you to have such combat power. In the future, you will definitely be a dragon among men. Today I have a few pots of good wine. Are you all willing to drink?" Long Chen laughed and said, "Let's drink until we are drunk." Yenli, who was beside Lu Yi, also smiled. She looked deeply at Long Chen and turned to leave. She said, "I will prepare some food and wine for you all. Consider it as a celebration for today." Lu Yi looked at Yenli with a stunned expression and said, "Sister Yenli, are you really going to cook? Can I not eat?" Everyone was stunned. However, when they saw Yenli's murderous gaze, they immediately smiled and pulled Lu Yi into the cave abode. Amidst the laughter, the smell of wine had already filled the cave abode. Only Marquis Fengqing seemed to have something on his mind. His brows were still slightly furrowed. When the food and wine were all filled, everyone could not stop drinking. Long Chen ate the food and drank the strong wine in big mouthfuls. He did not look like the ruler of his previous life. At this moment, his heart was burning. This life was his life. There was no hatred for his parents' annihilation, no sorrow for his brothers' tragic deaths, no regret for his close friends. He is not eating. Good food. Lady Yenli's cooking is too good. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. There was no amount of wine, no taste of food, but they were happy to be immersed in it. Ao Sangqiong was drunk. He walked in front of Long Chen and shouted, "Brother Long Chen, when we met, you invited me to drink. Since we were in the Fire Seed Mystic Realm, you and I fought side by side. Since we are drinking together today, why don't we become brothers? In the future, we will drink together and live and die together." Chapter 265. Son of God, live and die together. These 4 words were simple, but Long Chen had lived for more than 300 years. How many people could do it? The higher the cultivation, the more afraid of death. Only Ao Sangqiong was different. As the ruler of the Dark Night, he had lived a life of righteousness and integrity. But in the end, he didn't destroy his Tao heart and become a demon. He killed countless creatures in the Dark Night Divine Kingdom just to give him a chance to live. Long Chen's wine glass fell to the ground. His eyes were bloodshot. He bowed and said, "I'm willing to live and die with you, big brother. I'll never change." In his previous life, Long Chen became the strongest ruler of the Dark Night Kingdom after 300 years. He didn't kneel to heaven or earth. In this life, he only knelt to his parents and respected the heavens. Ao Sangqiong lifted Long Chen up and drank. There's no need for the sun and moon to prove it. There's no need for an oath. Today, with your bow, I, Ao Sangqiong, am your big brother. I'll never change. After 3 rounds of drinking, everyone was dead drunk the next day. No one used their spiritual energy to disperse the alcohol. Even Lu Yi and Yenliran were the same. Only Long Chen and Lord Fengqing didn't get drunk. They walked to the edge of the mountain and felt the mountain peak. Long Chen never got drunk. It wasn't because he was good at drinking, but because he never allowed himself to get drunk. This was a habit he had for more than 300 years in his previous life. In his previous life, He valued his life more than anything else because he had too many things to bear. Lord Fengqing was different. However, he didn't allow himself to get drunk because he was a smart person. Smart people don't do stupid things. Yesterday I heard a lot about the Li clan. Are you really not afraid after killing Qing Yunzi? Lord Fengqing finally asked. Long Chen smiled and said, It'll be a little troublesome, but there's nothing to be afraid of. Hearing Long Chen's words, Lord Fengqing didn't say anything else. He turned around and looked at Jian Shisan, as if he had made a decision. Long Chen seemed to have read his mind and asked, Are you leaving? Marquis Fengqing nodded and replied, I want to take a look at the ancient desolation land. Long Chen nodded his head and didn't say anything else. He didn't express any intention to travel with them. Since Marquis Fengqing said so, it meant that he wanted to travel alone. You and I are friends, and you are also Jian Shisan's brother. Let me use this technique to send you off. Long Chen pointed at Marquis Fengqing's forehead. Marquis Fengqing did not dodge. Immediately after, a strand of spiritual will entered his sea of consciousness. The two drank another cup. Fengqing Ho turned around and walked down the Bailian Peak. He said, You are the 13th master. Help me take care of him. If he dies because of you, you and I will be enemies. Fengqing Ho's voice reverberated in Long Chen's ears. Looking at his departing figure, Long Chen smiled and nodded. Marquis Fengqing and Jian Shisan were two completely different people. Marquis Fengqing didn't want to be under anyone. He was a smart person and also a person with great ambitions. He didn't want to continue following Long Chen. He lost his right arm, but Long Chen gave him martial skills and cultivation method. The two of them didn't owe each other anything. However, this made him understand that following Long Chen would only make him walk under Long Chen's shadow. He would rather go to the ancient desolation land alone to see the wider sky and walk the path in his heart. Long Chen stood at the edge of the peak, feeling the cold mountain wind. He stood there for several hours. Then, he turned into a light rainbow and flew out of the 5 great sections. In the depths of the valley, several purple star assassins rushed out from the darkness and appeared in front of him. 10 people set out, but only 6 had returned, and all of them were heavily injured. Purple Star Emissary, the assassination mission failed. We are willing to accept any punishment. Although the 5 of them were injured, their voices were still cold. Long Chen frowned and nodded slightly. He took out several Emperor-level healing pills and gave them to them. Then, he asked, Why did the mission fail? Tell me in detail. After hearing their report, Long Chen let out a deep breath and said in a low voice, It seems that this is the will of the heavens. If the young master of the Li clan doesn't die, then when I enter the ancient desolation land, it will be the day of the Li clan's destruction. You can leave. You don't have to worry about this mission anymore. You just have to complete the other assassination missions from the 5 great sections. However, do your best to do it flawlessly, Long Chen ordered. As he spoke, he took out a few more pills and gave them to them as a reward for this assassination mission. The few of them accepted the order and hid in the darkness. This time, they assassinated 3 Dao integration stage cultivators and severely injured the young master of the Li clan. According to them, the young master of the Li clan had 3 late-stage Dao integration stage cultivators by his side. The young master of the Li clan also had a life-saving Dharma treasure that was extremely terrifying. They had no choice but to give up on the mission. Not only that, but the young master of the Li clan was still bringing people to the 5 great sections. The next day, the 5 great sect leaders gathered at the peak of the 100 Smelting Clan. Immediately after, a piece of news spread throughout the 5 great sects and caused a huge commotion. After a discussion among the 5 great sect leaders, Long Chen was conferred as the Holy Son of the 5 great sects. After the Holy Maiden of Yi Hailan, this was the first time the title of Holy Son had appeared in the 5 great sections. He could enjoy the resources of the 5 great sects and be nurtured by the 5 great sects together. While countless people were envious, they also understood the intentions of the 5 great sect leaders. Although Long Chen displayed unprecedented talent by killing Qin Yunzi, he also caused trouble at the same time. Conferring him as the Holy Sun meant that they wanted to protect him. However, no matter what, Long Chen's reputation was at its peak. Even his and Yi Heilan's titles of Holy Sun and Holy Maiden made people's imaginations run wild. Jian Shisan asked Long Chen about Marquis Fengqing's whereabouts. After knowing that Marquis Fengqing had chosen to leave, he was not surprised. He and Marquis Fengqing were like brothers and naturally knew him well. You should also try to improve your cultivation during this period. If you have any questions, you can ask me. After a while, we will also be heading to the ancient barren land, Long Chen said to Jian Shisan. In fact, if the young master of the Li clan had died in this assassination attempt, Long Chen had planned to head to the ancient barren land after stabilizing his cultivation base. However, it seemed that he had to settle the matter of the young master of the Li clan and the 5 great sects first. In the afternoon, a huge flying beast appeared in the sky above the 5 great sections. The beast looked like a black tortoise but did not have a shell. Instead, it had 2 huge wings on its back. It was very strange. Many people from the 5 great sects immediately walked out of their cave abodes and looked up into the sky. The 5 great sect leaders and many elders of the Tao integration stage all flew into the sky. As they got closer, they realized that the huge flying beast was covered in horrifying wounds. There were more than 10 people standing on top of the beast, and they were all Tao integration stage cultivators. In the middle of the group, there was a man dressed in a bright red robe. His face was pale and he was obviously severely injured. However, his red lips were like that of a woman's and were extremely eye-catching. Chapter 266. A dirty deal dressed in a red robe, his face was pale, but his makeup was thick and his fingernails were colorful. This person was the young master of the Li clan, Li Qianye. Where was Qin Yunzi? As soon as these words were spoken, the faces of the sect leaders of the 5 great sects, except for the sect leader of the Divine Blade sect, sank. The sect leader of the 100 Smelting sect nodded slightly and walked forward. He said in a deep voice, "A few days ago, Qin Yunzi fought with the Holy Sun of our 5 great sects and was accidentally killed. The leader of the 100 Smelting clan didn't intend to hide it because he knew that Qin Yunzi was killed by Long Chen. Almost everyone in the 5 major sects knew about it, so Li Qianye would hear about it sooner or later." As soon as he said that, the people from the 5 great sects became nervous. Hearing this, Li Qianye frowned and asked, "Holy Sun? When did the 5 major sects have a Holy Sun?" "Forget it," Qin Yunzi said that he had prepared a place for me to cultivate in the Godly Knife clan. "Is that true?" When the 5 major sects heard that Li Qianye didn't intend to ask about it, they were overjoyed. However, they had never heard of the so-called place for cultivation, so they looked at the leader of the Godly Knife clan. The leader of the Godly Knife clan didn't seem to understand, but he seemed to have thought of something. He stepped forward and said, "Everyone, please follow me." Li Qianye and the others didn't seem to care about Qin Yunzi's death, which surprised the people of the 5 major sections. However, Long Chen knew the reason. Li Qianye looked normal, but he was seriously injured. At this moment, he didn't have the mind to care about Qin Yunzi. 4 out of 10 Purple Star assassins died under the assassination, which was enough to show how tragic the battle was. The people of the Li clan didn't return to the ancient desolate land after the assassination, but chose to come to the 5 major sects instead. It was enough to show that they were seriously injured and didn't dare to make the long journey back to the ancient desolate land. Instead, they sought refuge in the 5 major sects to prevent another assassination. Even in the ancient desolate land, the reputation of the Dark Star organization would make any clan tremble in fear. After seeing the people of the Li clan enter the Godly Knife clan's mountain, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. The clan leader of the 100 Smelting Clan came to Long Chen and reminded him, "You should stay in the 100 Smelting Clan and don't go out." "The young master of the Li clan won't stay for long," Long Chen nodded slightly. In his heart, he knew that the Li clan might leave, but the day they returned would be the day when they married Yi Hailan. Even with the arrival of the Li clan, the 5 major sects did not seem to have changed at all. Even the young master of the Li clan and his followers stayed in the back mountain of the Godly Knife clan and never appeared in the blink of an eye. A month had passed. Everyone had even forgotten that the Li clan was still at the back mountain of the Godly Knife sect. During this period of time, Long Chen had been cultivating almost every day and night. With the identity of the Holy Sun, he could mobilize the resources of the 5 great sects at will. His cultivation had also increased rapidly. Unfortunately, in a month's time, Long Chen's cultivation had only advanced from the 1st level of the Void Return Realm to the 3rd level of the Void Return Realm. The golden core condensed from the sea of qi within his dantian was simply too terrifying. The amount of spirit energy he needed was 100 times that of cultivators of the same level in this month. Almost all the pills he had consumed were Emperor grade. Furthermore, they were all personally refined by him and Louis. Now, Louis's alchemy cultivation had reached the level of 7th grade king grade pills. During his cultivation, Long Chen also discovered an extremely strange thing. That was, ever since the Li clan entered the Godly Knife sect, the sect master of the Godly Knife sect had been visiting the other 4 major sects almost every day. On this day, Long Chen finally stopped cultivating, because the young master of the Li clan of the Godly Knife sect actually wanted to meet the holy daughter of the 5 great sects, Yi Hailan. Long Chen went to the back mountain of the Wanjian sect and arrived at the Purple Bamboo Building. At this moment, the sect master of the Wanjian sect was also there. His expression did not seem to be good. "Why are you here?" Yi Hailan could not help but be surprised to see Long Chen. Long Chen bowed slightly to the sect master of the Wanjian sect and replied, "I will go with you to meet the young master of the Li clan." "Why?" "No reason." The sect master of the Wanjian sect and Yi Hailan were both stunned. They were somewhat puzzled by Long Chen's determination. The sect master of the Wanjian sect said to Long Chen, "It seems that Qin Yunzi is just an insignificant character in the eyes of the young master of the Li clan. After a few more days they should leave. You'd better not go, right?" Long Chen frowned slightly and said, "Sect master, if you have something to say, just say it. Since the young master of the Li clan did not pursue Qin Yunzi's death, then what's wrong with me going to meet him?" The sect master of the Wanjian sect sighed deeply and said in a low voice, "It's not impossible for you to go, but no matter what you see, you must not be overly agitated. The Li clan is definitely not something that we, the 5 major sects, can provoke." Long Chen and Yi Hailan had a trace of doubt in their eyes. It was obvious that they had informed Yi Hailan of this before. It was noon. The sect master of the Wanjian sect brought Long Chen and Yi Hailan to the peak of the Godly Knife sect. The sect master of the Godly Knife sect frowned slightly when he saw Long Chen. Originally, he was somewhat hostile towards Long Chen after Qin Yunzi's death. Later on, when he discussed with the other 4 sect masters about making Long Chen the son of saint, they persuaded him to not bear a grudge against him. The sect master of the Godly Knife sect looked at Long Chen and Yi Hailan and said in a low voice, "No matter what you see, you must control your emotions. They should leave in 3 days." Long Chen and Yi Hailan also felt that this trip might not be so simple. In his previous life, Long Chen left the 5 major sects less than half a month after Li Qianye's arrival. He did not know much about the Li clan. Not only that, Long Chen had changed many things in this life. Whether it was killing Zhu Wuqing, causing the Tinder secret realm to close prematurely, or killing Qin Yunzi, they were all very different from his previous life. The timing of Li Qianye's arrival was also different from his previous life. Now, the Li clan was severely injured and had entered the 5 major sects for more than a month. Under the guidance of the sect master of the Godly Knife sect, Long Chen and Yi Hailon stepped into the mountain behind the Godly Knife sect. However, both of them frowned very quickly. The pungent smell of blood caused their expressions to change. The sect master of the Godly Knife sect looked extremely gloomy. He said coldly, "I said, no matter what you see, don't say anything. They will leave in 3 days." The two of them continued to walk towards the back of the mountain. However, the next scene caused Yi Hailon's beautiful face to turn pale. She saw that the ground around them was actually covered in thick blood and countless human bones, forming a matrix. Looking at the horrifying baby heads, Yi Hailon could not help but move closer to Long Chen. He even pulled on his sleeve subconsciously. Chapter 267. The 5 Sects Calamity, the Blood-Congealing Formation. Long Chen recognized the origin of the formation at a glance. The sect master of the Godly Knife sect heard this and his expression turned ugly. This formation was based on the flesh and blood of virgins and masculine men. It could be said that it was an evil formation. Qing Yunzi had built such a place in the Godly Knife sect to please Li Qianye. It was really disappointing. The 3 of them stopped. There was an altar in front of them that was dozens of meters high. The people of the Li clan were sitting on it, and the black veil covered their vision. Li Qianye's soft voice came from behind the veil. "The holy maiden of the 5 sects, Yi Hailon. Not bad, not bad. Young master, we have recovered from all our injuries and your old illness has also improved. Why don't we return to the ancient desolate land and take this girl with us?" A middle-aged man beside Li Qianye said casually. From their words, it seemed that they did not care about Long Chen and the sect master of the Godly Knife sect. They just let them stand there. Li Qianye laughed sharply and said, "How can you be so rude? We will return to the Li clan in 2 days and come here to marry the holy maiden. This must be done with great fanfare and let all the clans in the northern region know, yes." Everyone nodded in agreement. Long Chen's powerful divine consciousness spread out and saw through all the people inside. He finally knew why the so-called young master of the Li clan wanted to marry Yi Hailon and why he built the blood-congealing formation. It was because he had the blood of a woman even though he was a man. He was born with the triple yang body, but his clan's blood was a kind of Yin bloodline. Therefore, he was neither a man nor a woman and had to use this evil formation to maintain his masculine qi. "Who are you?" Li Qianye asked Long Chen casually. The sect master of the Godly Knife sect quickly replied, "He is the holy maiden of the 5 sects, Long Chen." Li Qianye had been in the 5 sects for a long time. Although he had never stepped out of the Godly Knife sect and seemed to be very calm, he knew some things about the 5 sects. "Oh? You're the Long Chen who could only kill Qing Yunzi when you were at the Return to Void stage. That's right. When the time comes, bring him back to the clan," Li Qianye said indifferently. The sect leader of the Godly Knife faction's expression changed abruptly. He hurriedly said, "The holy maidens and holy sons of the 5 sects are the pillars of our 5 major sections. They cannot leave the 5 major sections. Please make a decision, young Master Li." Bang! However, just as his voice fell, a black-robed man walked out from under the black veil. With a move of his right hand, a stream of fire condensed out of thin air, transforming into a giant hammer that smashed into the Godly Knife faction leader's chest. The sect master of the Godly Knife sect was sent flying several hundred meters away. The huge hammer was surrounded by raging flames, and it was filled with scorching yang qi, making it seem like an illusion. The 5 major sects are located in the north of the ancient barren land, and our Li clan is the closest to this place. If you don't want the 5 major sects to be annihilated 1 month later, hand over the holy sons and holy maidens to the Li clan," the middle-aged man shouted coldly. The sect leader of the Godly Knife faction did not dare to say anything else. Long Chen did not say anything because he knew that he would not be going to the Li clan with Yi Hailon a month later. After hearing the Li clan's words, he understood in his heart. The Li clan was located in the north of the 5 major sects and the ancient barren land. They seemed to want to completely turn the 5 major sects into a land of supply, or a blood farm. Alright, all of you can leave. From now on, the 5 major sects will belong to the Li clan. Prepare yourselves. 1 month later, we will personally welcome the holy sons and holy maidens. If even one of them leaves, the entire 5 major sects will face the calamity of annihilation. Do you understand? Li Qianye's tone was cold. For some reason, his gaze landed on Long Chen and did not seem to be very interested in Yi Hailon. Another middle-aged man seemed to have noticed something amiss and shouted coldly, "All of you can leave now. In 2 days, prepare 200 masculine men and 100 virgin boys to come with us." The sect leader of the Godly Knife faction looked extremely uncomfortable. He slowly walked out with Long Chen and Yi Hailon. After the few of them left, the man behind Li Qianye said, "Young master, this lady's appearance is unparalleled. Even the female prodigies of the major clans in the ancient barren land can't compare to her. If it wasn't for Qin Yunzi, I'm afraid we wouldn't have known that there was such a place in the north of the ancient barren land. Yi Hailon will take back the Li clan, clear my name, and shut the mouths of the other clans. This place is indeed barren. Even the so-called 5 major sects only have a few spirit veins. When the time comes, we can just take them away. From now on, this place will be the place where my clansmen collect their blood." The people of the Li clan didn't seem to care about the people of the 5 major sects at all. This time, they only came to the 5 major sects to investigate and then take control of the 5 major sections. After the sect leader of the Godly Knife faction left, his face turned gloomy. He brought Long Chen and Yi Hailon directly to the peak of the Wanjian sect. After a while, the sect leaders of the 5 major sects gathered at the peak of the Wanjian sect. Countless elders stood around. The sect leader of the Godly Knife faction said coldly, "Qin Yunzi actually did so many things behind my back. He used the 5 major sects to make a deal. Yi Hailon definitely can't let the people of the Li clan take her away. She has the 1000 extreme body. If she awakens the 7 extreme body in the future, the 5 major sects will have the opportunity to completely set foot in the ancient barren land and establish a major clan." The sect leader of the Wanjian sect was also livid. Every generation of the 5 major sects had the 1000 extreme body. As the saintess, the cultivation of each generation represented the strength of the next generation. Once the 7 extreme body was awakened, they would have an extremely strong combat power. The 5 major sects controlled the 9 great empires and cultivated talents so that they could one day set foot in the ancient barren land and become a force that could compete with the various ancient clans. Once Yi Hailon was taken away, they would completely lose all hope. Without the 1000 extreme body, the 5 major sects wouldn't be able to produce an ultimate expert, and they wouldn't have the chance to set foot in the ancient barren land. However, Yi Hailon's 7 extreme body hasn't awakened yet. We don't have the slightest bit of combat power to compete with the ancient Li clan. If we don't obey, what awaits us is only a strong suppression, and even the destruction of our sect. The sect leader of the Tongbi faction said in a low voice. The sect leader of the Divine Pulse faction also said coldly, "During this period of time, according to my investigation, the ancient Li clan has the bloodline of the extreme Bat. This bloodline has been passed down from ancient times, and the ancient Li clan has been standing in the ancient barren land for over 1000 years. This clan is bloodthirsty." Once this was said, everyone gasped. They finally understood why the ancient Li clan wanted to come here to investigate and why they didn't care about Qin Yunzi's death at all. At this moment, the 5 major sects were just like the ancient Li clan's courtyard. They could take whatever they wanted without any restraint. While everyone was discussing, Yi Hailon's face turned paler and paler. Just like what the sect leaders of the 5 major sects said, she was born so that the 5 major sects could set foot in the ancient barren land, and their goal was to let her awaken the 7 extreme body, the 1000 extreme body. Chapter 268. The choice of the 5 sects. Long Chen's words shocked everyone. The leaders of the 5 sects shook their heads. Although Long Chen was powerful, he was too young. They had taken a liking to Long Chen's potential. This was also the reason why the 5 great sects had chosen him as their holy disciple. In their hearts, they might be able to nurture him into a supreme being who surpassed the Tao integration stage and was comparable to the human king stage in 10 years or even a few years. A human king was the minimum requirement to stand tall in the ancient barren land. However, the arrival of the Li clan had completely disrupted their plans. They had no other choice but to compromise. Long Chen, what do you have in mind? Let's hear it, the leader of the 100 Smelting clan asked. A cold smile flashed across the corners of Long Chen's mouth as he said coldly, "Kill, kill." As Long Chen said this, the temperature in the meeting hall of the Wanjian sect suddenly dropped by a few degrees. Are you out of your mind? Kill? How? The Li ancient clan has existed in the ancient desolate land for thousands of years and has a human king expert. Once a human king expert makes a move, our 5 great sects will be annihilated in an instant. The surrounding elders snorted. Tao integration stage cultivators could form a soul seed and comprehend the Tao of laws. Below the Tao integration stage, some could even form a Tao body. Above the Tao integration stage was the human king realm. Even the weakest clan in the ancient barren land had to have a human king realm cultivator. The Li clan was located at the edge of the north region and should be considered one of the 9 clans in the ancient barren land. There should not be more than 3 human king realm cultivators in their group. The leader of the 100 Smelting clan shook his head slightly. He thought that Long Chen would have a way to save them. He did not expect it to be just the word kill. Long Chen did not think much of it. He stood in the middle of the crowd and said coldly, "The Li clan's bloodline is extremely lean. They even feed on human blood. If you compromise today, what awaits you will be a complete decline. Within a year, the 5 sects will become the place where they choose masculine men and virgins. Within 10 years, no one from the 9 great empires will be willing to enter the 5 sections. 20 years later, the 5 sects will only be 5 mountains." Long Chen's voice was as loud as a bell, and his words became more and more severe. His divine consciousness also spread out. The 5 sect leaders and many Tao integration stage elders felt a terrifying aura emanating from Long Chen's body. They couldn't help but feel an urge to submit and kneel before him. Everyone knew that Long Chen's words were not false. Once they compromised today, their decline would be destined, and the 5 great sects would have no chance of rising again. The Wanjian sect's sect master's expression suddenly sank. He said coldly, "Our 5 great sects have been passed down for so long. We have been united for the sake of leaving this barren land one day and heading to the primordial era, to become a sovereign personage. If we fail just like this, I will not accept it." The 5 major sects and many Tao integration stage elders fell silent upon hearing this. After a while, Yi Hailon stared at Long Chen and said, "What do you plan to do?" "I would rather die than go to the Li clan." At this moment, Long Chen might have become her last hope. Long Chen stared at Yi Hailon. She might have been like this in her previous life as well, but Long Chen's departure made her disheartened. In this life, Long Chen would never allow such a thing to happen again. Long Chen stared at the sect leaders of the 5 major sects and said, "Give me resources and time. I can even fight a sovereign personage. When the time comes, the Li clan will be the foundation of the 5 major sects." Long Chen's strong confidence shocked everyone from the 5 major sections. The Wanjian sect's sect leader was even more shocked. "You mean you want to lead us to destroy the Li clan, the bloodline ancient clan that has been passed down in the primordial era? Resources and time? How much resources and how much time? The 100 smelting clan leaders said in a low voice. Defeat a sovereign personage? You're only at the early stage Void Return realm now. Even if your combat power is heaven-defying, it's only comparable to an early stage Dao integration stage cultivator. Killing a Dao integration stage cultivator like Qin Yunzi, who relied on elixirs, is already your limit. If you encounter a Dao integration stage cultivator who has congealed a Dao body, I'm afraid you won't even be able to defeat an early stage Dao integration stage cultivator, let alone a sovereign personage. From the early stage Void Return realm to the sovereign personage realm, even if you're extremely talented, it's impossible for you to do so without 10 years. Everyone discussed fervently. They couldn't understand Long Chen's words at all. However, Yi Hailon seemed to have thought of something and was shocked. The spirit veins under the 5 major sections. If there are spirit veins, can you still absorb them like that? Long Chen revealed a faint smile and said in a low voice, To kill a sovereign personage, I don't need to be a sovereign personage. As long as I reach the mid-stage Dao integration stage, I can kill a sovereign personage and have the power to fight. Kill a sovereign personage. Everyone was stunned. The extreme sect leader asked Yi Hailon, What do you mean? So what if he can absorb all the spirit veins under the 5 major sects? Yi Hailon replied in a deep voice, On that day, Long Chen absorbed all the fire attribute spirit veins in the Fire Seed secret realm in 6 days. That's why his cultivation base rose to the late stage of the soul formation realm in one fell swoop and killed Zhu Wuqing, who was at the late stage of the Void Return realm. After that, he fought Ho Fuan, killed the monstrous disciple of the Tongbi sect, and defeated the Wanjian sect's Lian Cheng. Everyone's expression changed. The extreme sect leader cried out in shock. You're saying that there's a spirit veins in the Fire Seed mystic realm, and he absorbed all of them in 6 days? How is this possible? A spirit veins have boundless spirit veins. Even the breath of an entire sect can last forever. To be able to absorb all of them in 6 days. Don't talk nonsense. No one present dared to believe Yi Hailon's words. However, Long Chen walked in front of everyone. The aura around his body suddenly dissipated, and the shadow of a golden core swept out from his dantian. Above the golden core, there was a terrifying aura. The moment the shadow appeared, the surrounding space started to crack inch by inch. Everyone here is a Dao integration stage cultivator. Naturally, you're familiar with the golden core. This golden core is condensed from my 100,000-mile sea of vital energy. As Long Chen's voice fell, the golden core started to spin violently and turned into a boundless spirit light. For a moment, everyone felt as if they were in a boundless spirit sea. The spirit sea was vast and mighty, and the shadow was like a tide that stretched for 100,000 miles. The shadow disappeared in a flash. In the conference hall at the summit of the Wanjian sect, all the Dao integration stage cultivators and even the sect leaders of the 5 major sects were stunned. Their bodies couldn't help but tremble as they stared at Long Chen. At this moment, they finally understood why Long Chen was able to battle Dao integration stage cultivators even though he was only at the return to void stage. Heaven-defying talent, the power of the bloodline, and the inheritance of the heavenly sword technique. Whether you live or die, whether you take a gamble and enter the ancient barren land, or would you rather be a pig and be kept in captivity? Are you still hesitating? Long Chen's voice was like rolling thunder. This was the last chance he was giving to the 5 major sections. Everyone from the 5 major sects fell silent. In front of them was an ancient clan with an inheritance and an exceptional prodigy. Chapter 269. A complete break. A golden core formed by 100,000 miles. The people from the 5 major sects were all shocked. After a while, the 100 smelting sect leader was the first to step forward. Instead of dying slowly and being reared like pigs and dogs, why don't we take a gamble? Everyone was silent. Then, the sect leaders nodded one after another, their faces filled with determination. Long Chen stared at them and said, "Everyone, think carefully today. Tomorrow I hope to capture Li Qianye with you. Only then can we buy enough time." At this moment, the 5 major sects were like drowning people, and Long Chen had thrown them a life-saving bamboo stick. The Tongbi sect leader frowned slightly. "If we agree to his request and let him return to the Li clan, wouldn't we have an extra month of preparation?" However, before he could finish his words, he was interrupted. The Lord of the Godly Knife clan and the Lord of the Myriad Sword clan both had a cold expression on their faces as they said, "They want to take hundreds of masculine men and virgin boys with them when they leave. Since they want to break off completely, we can't just stand by and watch." These days, the Li clan's Dao integration stage elders have been killing people every day. Even many of our Divine Vein sect's young disciples have been killed. Everyone clenched their fists and remained silent. The Li clan had killed many young disciples in the past month, causing the 5 major sects to be angry but not dare to say anything. Everyone finally came to an agreement and then slowly dispersed. Long Chen followed Yi Hailong to the back mountain of the Wanjian sect, where the purple bamboo house was. The two of them walked one after the other. Yi Hailong suddenly stopped and said gently, "Can you really get rid of the Li clan, and let the 5 major sects establish a foothold in the ancient barren land?" Long Chen nodded slightly. He knew what this meant to Yi Hailong. The 5 major sects had been nurturing the 1,000 severance body and the sect's saintest generation after generation, all for the sake of one day stepping foot into the ancient barren land and obtaining a place there. From there, they would have the opportunity to become a human king. If Long Chen could complete all of this, then she would have her freedom and would never have to care about the 1,000 extremes physique. Long Chen looked at Yi Hailong's beautiful back. Long Chen couldn't help but say, "I promise you that I will take them away from the 5 sects and enter the ancient desolate land. Your 7 extinction physique will never awaken." Yi Hailong's body trembled slightly as he nodded gently. The two of them did not speak. Yi Hailong walked up to the attic, while Long Chen stood at the bottom of the attic, just like before. The next day, many disciples of the Godly Saber sect left the Godly Saber Mountain, leaving the entire Godly Saber sect empty. Li Qianye and the others at the back of the Shundao Peak seemed to have realized that something was wrong. They all walked out of the back of the mountain. However, waiting for them were the sect leaders of the 5 major sects, as well as many Dao integration stage elders of the 5 major sects. Li Qianye and the others behind him saw this and their faces instantly darkened. Li Qianye even said in a shrill voice, "Are you trying to rebel? There are only a few Dao integration stage cultivators in the 5 major sections. Do you know the consequences of going against the Li family?" The sect leader of the Shindao sect said coldly, "Since you only treat us as blood supplies, why don't we give it our all? Attack!" The 5 major sects leaders and the Dao integration stage elders soared into the sky. Li Qianye and the others' faces darkened. They never thought that something like this would happen just as they were about to leave. Several Dao integration stage cultivators behind Li Qianye leaped and appeared in front of him, protecting him. Among them, 3 of the elders were at the advanced stage of the Dao integration stage. Their aura was even stronger than that of the 5 major sects sect leaders. The 3 of them walked at the front and stood in the air. Looking at the 5 major sects leaders, they sneered. "You can't stop us. However, the day we return will be the day the 5 major sects are destroyed. You will also become blood supplies for the Li family." As the 3 of them finished speaking, divine light radiated from their bodies. They were like heavenly gods, and no one dared to look at them directly. Everyone gasped. Although the 5 major sects sect leaders were also at the advanced stage of the body refinement stage, they knew that they were no match for these 3 people. This was because not only did they possess ancient bloodlines, but they were also Dao integration stage cultivators who had materialized their Dao bodies. Extreme Een Bat Kill. Extreme Frost Purgatory. Blood sea cover the sky. The three of them shouted coldly, and under the divine light around their bodies, a huge blood-red bat shadow rose up behind them. Then, the eyes of the three of them became long and thin, and a long row of exposed teeth appeared, causing people to be intimidated just by looking at them. As their voices fell, their attacks instantly engulfed all the cultivators of the 5 major sections. Whoosh! In an instant, a Tao integration stage cultivator from the Tongbi sect exploded into a pool of blood. The three of them sucked in the air and absorbed all his blood. The Wanjian sect leader's long sword transformed into thousands of streaks of light. He soared into the sky with a solemn expression. The Divine Vein sect leader's body was engulfed in raging flames. His eyes glowed green. He actually possessed the bloodline of the Firewolf. The 5 major sect leaders all unleashed their powers to suppress the three of them. In particular, the 100 Smelting sect leader held a huge cauldron in his hand. It was as if there were raging flames within it. As the cauldron expanded, it forcibly engulfed an elder of the Li family who was at the advanced stage of the soul formation stage. Many Tao integration stage cultivators from the 5 major sects fought with the Li family. The entire mountain peak of the Godly Saber sect trembled. The mountains and earth shook and the clouds changed color. Often, the clash of swords and sabers would continue for thousands of meters. However, Long Chun still didn't appear. Bam bam bam. The people from the 5 major sects retreated in defeat. Many of them were injured or killed. The Li family also suffered heavy losses. Apart from the 3 late-stage Tao integration stage elders who had materialized their Tao bodies, the rest were all killed. The 3 people who had materialized their Tao bodies were bathed in divine light. Even though they were severely injured, they recovered in an instant. One of them even had his physical body destroyed by the 5 major sect leaders. However, his soul seed was still intact. These were Tao integration stage cultivators who had materialized their Tao bodies. There was a world of difference between them and ordinary Tao integration stage cultivators. Do you know what you're doing? Once my young master's nameplate shatters, what awaits you is an endless massacre. The elder whose physical body had been destroyed shouted with a venomous expression. The person beside him shouted, "You country bumpkins can't take us down. The most powerful attack you have is only an emperor-level martial arts technique. Moreover, none of you have materialized your Tao bodies." However, at this moment, the two of them suddenly felt a chill run down their spines. A wave of murderous intent surged straight into their hearts. The 3 of them instantly had goosebumps all over their bodies. They instinctively retreated rapidly. At this moment, numerous dark stars swept out from the darkness. Their murderous intents were ready to be unleashed. The moment they retreated, they felt a flash of lightning and thunder behind them. Unknowingly, a long sword had already landed on Li Chenya's neck. The moment the 3 of them turned around, they saw Long Chun, who was covered in scales and had a pair of wings on his back. Lightning surged from his body as he bound Li Chenya in his hands. You're from the Dark Star Organization. The people from the 5 major sects are actually related to the Dark Star Organization. Is this what you're relying on? Chapter 270. Outlook within the Godly Saber sect. The appearance of Long Chun and several Purple Star assassins instantly caused the 3 late-stage Immortal Soul integration cultivators of the Li clan to fall into a passive position. A month ago, they had flown 10,000 meters high on the back of a demonic beast, but they had been ambushed by 10 Purple Star cultivators and suffered heavy losses. The Dark Star Organization was even more infamous in the ancient desolate land, and they were known as the King of the Dark Forces. When they saw the Dark Star assassin, their hearts trembled. Long Chun stared at the 3 of them and said, "Go back and tell your masters that the 5 biggest sects have captured Li Chenya. If they want to keep him alive, prepare 300,000 top-level spirit stones." The faces of the 3 Tao integration experts were ashen, but Li Chenya had already fallen into Long Chun's hands. Li Qianye took a deep look at Long Chen and said, "The Purple Star emissary at the Void Return stage? I didn't expect the holy sons of the 5 great sects to have such an identity." Li Qianye looked at Long Chen. His expression was surprisingly calm, but even so, Long Chen's powerful divine mind caught a trace of fear in the depths of his eyes. The 3 Dao integration stage elites stared blankly at Long Chen and said coldly, "All right, but if you dare to kill our young master, what awaits you will be the wrath of the human king. Let's go." The 3 of them were surrounded by divine light, and the air trembled wherever they passed. Even the 5 sect leaders did not dare to face them head-on. At this moment, the Dao integration stage experts of the 5 major sects were all severely injured. Facing the 3 of them, he felt a deep sense of helplessness. Whether it was cultivation, martial skills, or bloodline power, he was far inferior to them. This was a clan with an ancient bloodline. They had the most compatible cultivation methods, and they also had the most suitable god-level legacy martial technique. They knew that if it weren't for Long Chen and the Purple Star assassins, they would have had to pay a painful price to kill these people. However, at this moment, Long Chen stared at the dead elder of the Li clan who possessed the physical body of the Great Path and said, "The 2 of them can leave, but you have to stay." The 3 Dao integration final stage powerful beings shuddered, and 2 of them harumphed coldly as they looked at their companion, who only had a soul seed left, with dark expressions on their faces. As for the Li clan elder, whose physical body had been severed and only his soul seed left, he had no chance of escaping under the eyes of the many experts of the 5 major sects. Wait for the wrath of the Li clan. The 2 Dao integration stage super mighty figures disappeared into the distance. Even though they had achieved a resounding victory, all of them wore dark expressions on their faces. They knew that they had no choice but to let these 2 go today. If they fought to the death, even if they won today, 3 of the 5 sect leaders would die, not to mention the other Dao integration stage elders. Even though they had managed to take down Li Qianye with the help of Long Chen and Purple Star, could they really go up against the ancient race? There were only 3 Dao integration experts who had condensed their Dao bodies, but they already felt powerless. Long Chen moved his sword and pierced Li Qianye's dantian. Li Qianye's shrill cry rang in everyone's ears. Everyone was shocked and looked at Long Chen in a daze. This scream scared away the fear in their hearts. Long Chen stepped on Li Qianye and stared coldly at the people of the 5 major sections. "What's the use of being afraid now? Can you still turn back?" Looking at all the Dao integration stage powerful beings of the 5 major sects, Long Chen knew that he had achieved his goal today. Now that the 5 major sects had completely severed ties with the Li clan and the ancient race, they were tied to Long Chen. Li Qianye screamed at the top of his lungs and glared at Long Chen. You actually dared to destroy my cultivation. Just you wait. All of you will die. Within a month, you've killed at least thousands of people and devoured their flesh and blood. If it weren't for the fact that I need you to buy some time, I wouldn't have just destroyed you," Long Chen said indifferently. The people of the 5 major sects felt a chill in their hearts. They feared the Li clan and the ancient race from the bottom of their hearts, but Long Chen didn't seem to care at all. He could even kill Li Qianye with a wave of his hand. "Buy time? When my father, grandfather, and a few other Dao integration stage powerful beings arrive, the entire 5 major sects will be turned into a land of death." Li Qianye was in a frenzy. He didn't expect Long Chen to destroy him without a word. Long Chen looked at the stunned crowd and shook his head slightly. "Take him away and lock him up. He's completely useless now." As Long Chen spoke, he walked to the side of the illusory soul seed that was captured. This person was glowing but didn't have a physical body. This was the advantage of having a Dao integration stage body. At this moment, if there was a chance, this person could use the soul seed to possess someone else's body. Even though there were many restrictions, he could still survive. What are you doing?" The old man who had transformed into a soul stared at Long Chen with a trace of fear. Unfortunately, although he wasn't dead, he didn't have a physical body and couldn't manifest his cultivation. He was restrained by the 5 major sections. Long Chen slowly walked to his side and placed his right hand between the eyebrows of the old man's illusory soul seed. A powerful divine consciousness that was as vast as the galaxy poured out. This. What exactly are you, Plop? The old man who had transformed into a soul suddenly prostrated himself on the ground and trembled. Then, his entire soul turned into a faint spiritual glow and dissipated. Only a human-shaped soul seed remained in his dantian and was taken away by Long Chen. When everyone saw this, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Even the 5 major sects subconsciously swallowed their saliva. Dao integration stage cultivators with Dao integration stage bodies could have an indestructible soul seed. Even the 5 major sects could only trap them. If they wanted to kill them, they would need to refine them. However, Long Chen only took 2 breaths. As for the old man, he felt an extremely terrifying pressure before his soul dissipated. Let's disperse. Come to the Central Plaza tomorrow afternoon. I have something to tell you. For the next few days, prepare to face the Li clan and the Ancient clan. If there are no accidents, the Li clan will be the foundation for you to enter the ancient desolate land. Long Chen turned and left. After Long Chen left, everyone looked at each other. For some reason, they didn't have the slightest intention of disobeying Long Chen. It was as if everything was natural. After a moment of silence, everyone looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Now that things had come to this, they could only take one step at a time. Long Chen had become their last straw of hope. In the 100 Smelting Clan, Long Chen looked at the soul seed in his hand and muttered to himself, now that the 5 major sects have stabilized, there won't be any more anomalies. However, I don't know when the Li clan will come. I have to set up a large array that connects the 5 major sections. Only then will I have enough time to absorb the spiritual energy of the 5 spirit veins. And this soul seed, if I can refine it into a soul-breaking pill, then I should be able to condense a Dao integration stage body on the day I step into the Dao integration stage. Long Chen knew that he was going to face a human king expert. This was a battle that he couldn't afford to lose. This battle was for Yi Helan's freedom, for the 5 major sects to enter the ancient desolate land, and for himself. Chapter 271. Preparations. Li Qianye was imprisoned at the peak of the godly saber sect, guarded by the leaders of the 5 major sections. On the other side, Long Chen, as the Holy Sun, was the leader of the 5 major sections. All the Dao integration stage elders were in awe of him. They knew that Long Chen was the key to their victory in this battle. The Dao integration stage elders and disciples of the 100 Smelting Clan stood in a daze on the battle platform. On the battle platform, beneath their feet, the entire battle platform was engraved with a dense array formation. According to Long Chen, this array formation could be connected to the 5 major sections. Each sect had to build 9 array bases, each of which required a Dao integration stage cultivator to guard. Looking at the array formations all over the ground, every 100 smelting sect disciple bowed deeply to Long Chen, regardless of whether they were Dao integration stage elders or void return disciples. Their eyes were full of reverence. However, Long Chen did not do anything personally after leaving behind this array formation. After all, this array formation was an 8th grade king rank. Although he knew how to set it up, it was very difficult to do it. It was better to let the elders and disciples of the Dao integration stage study it slowly. He went to the peak of the godly saber sect. On the peak, a black iron pavilion had been set up. There was a figure on each of the 5 corners of the pavilion. They were the leaders of the 5 major sections. When the 5 of them saw Long Chen, they did not look relaxed. Instead, they looked a little solemn. After Li Qianye was crippled and the Li Ancient clan fled in defeat, their anger was replaced by fear. However, there was no turning back. The leader of the godly saber sect looked a little pale. He asked Long Chen repeatedly. Can you really reach the Dao integration stage in a short time? If you reach the Dao integration stage, can you form a Dao body? Can you really kill a human king? There are 3 human kings in the Li family. Can you fight all 3 of them? As soon as the leader of the Godly Saber sect finished speaking, the other 4 sect leaders' faces darkened. They shouted, "Shut up!" At this moment, Li Qianye suddenly burst into laughter inside the pentagonal pavilion. His shrill voice sent chills down everyone's spine. Li Qianye couldn't help but sneer. A path integration stage cultivator slaughtering 3 human kings. Apart from the 10 heaven-defying Dao children of the ancient desolate land, who else would dare to say such arrogant words? I didn't expect that the leaders of the 5 major clans would actually be deceived by an early-stage void reversion lad. The Li clan and the ancient clans have only been here for about 20 days. Even if we launched a large-scale attack, it would only take 30 days. An early-stage void reversion cultivator entering the Dao integration stage within 30 days? What a fool's dream! Li Qianye sneered in his heart when he saw the faces of the 5 sect masters. Unfortunately, his smile gradually disappeared when he saw Long Chen's face. Long Chen didn't seem to have made up his mind. He stood under the pavilion and said to the leaders of the 5 sects, "It's really a waste for the 5 of you to guard this place every day. After all, he's just a cripple now. Any disciple can easily kill him." The leaders of the 5 major clans shook their heads. They didn't want to leave, nor did they dare to leave. Li Qianye was their protective talisman. He was the protective talisman of the 5 major clans. If he escaped, once the Li clan and the ancient clans arrived, what awaited them would be eternal damnation. The entire 5 major clans would be bathed in blood. Long Chen shook his head. He seemed to have been prepared for this. He continued, "I'll set up an array formation on the peak of this mountain for the disciples of the 5 major clans who have reached the void reversion stage to cultivate. The 5 of you will use your own cultivation as the foundation and cycle back and forth. Is that okay?" The leaders of the 5 major clans smiled bitterly. However, they all nodded and agreed. Long Chen was the last straw that they could grab onto. Whether they believed it or not, they still had to shoot the arrow that was knocked on the bow. They naturally wouldn't resist Long Chen's suggestion. Putting all their hopes on a young man of the void reversion stage. This was nothing more than cutting off all means of retreat. Long Chen didn't hesitate and quickly began to carve. This moment lasted for 2 whole days and 1 night. On the entire peak, as the dantions of the 5 major clans flickered, the entire peak was suffused with 5 rays of light of the 5 elements. Ripples flickered on the platform on the peak, and the space seemed to be distorted. Even though it was right in front of them, they couldn't see it clearly. It was extremely mysterious. This array is called the 5 Elements Spirit Breaking Array. With the dantions of the 5 of you as the foundation, it condenses the will of the 5 elements and circulates endlessly. As long as the 5 of you don't leave this place, the array will continue to circulate without any side effects, Long Chen said calmly. The 5 of them were shocked by Long Chen's ability. They only felt that they were looking at Long Chen in a different light. An emperor-level alchemist, an array master, heaven-defying combat strength, unparalleled talent. However, at this moment, Li Qianye sneered again. He looked at the array and said, "Now you still want to cultivate disciples to fight against the ancient clans of the Li clan? Why don't you kneel down and beg me? When the time comes, I might let you die a quick death and leave some foundation for the 5 major clans. The ancient clans of the Li clan have inherited the bloodline of the ancient times. There are no less than 10,000 Dao integration cultivators, more than 1,000 who have condensed the Dao body, no less than 100,000 void return cultivators, countless soul transformation cultivators, and even 3 human kings. Now, do you still think there is a need for this array to exist?" Li Qianye's words were like ice on a rainy night, making everyone tremble in fear and feel a chill down their spines. 100,000 void return cultivators and close to 10,000 Dao integration cultivators. This ancient clan of the Li clan, could they really fight against it? Noisy. However, at this moment, Long Chen suddenly spoke. He waved his right hand in the air, and Li Qianye's entire body actually broke free from the protection of the 5 major clans and was directly caught in his hand. After stepping into the void return realm, Long Chen had regained a lot of control over his divine consciousness. This scene stunned the 5 major clans. Their divine consciousness seal seemed to have no effect on Long Chen at all. Long Chen looked at Li Qianye's neck and his eyes were full of coldness. He stared into Li Qianye's eyes and said indifferently, "It seems that they are too good to you." Li Qianye looked into Long Chen's eyes, which were as deep as a cold lake, and swallowed subconsciously. He only felt a chill down his spine. This gaze was too different from the eyes of the 5 major clans. It was as if he could take his life at any time. At this moment, Jian Shisan, Yi Hailan, and the others walked up with batches of void return disciples. They said in a deep voice, "Master, the first batch of people has been brought here." Long Chen nodded slightly and said, "From now on, I will leave this place to you. Yi will refine the elixirs, and everything within the array will be left to Yanli. I will add in the martial techniques and battle technique. If you have any questions, you can ask the various clans." 13. There is one more thing for you to do here, Long Chen instructed. Chapter 272. North of the North Region. In the ancient desolate land, at the border of the North Region, the pitch-black mountain range was like the claws of a ferocious ghost. There wasn't a hint of greenery on it. Instead, it was covered with blood-red rainbows. On the highest mountain peak, there was a strange palace that looked like a bat cave. The palace was pitch-black, and there were rugged rocks on it. It was inexplicably terrifying. This was where the Li family, which possessed the bloodline of the extreme Yin bat, was located. The Li family was only a remote corner of the boundless ancient desolate land. They could only be considered the lowest ancient clan. Even so, they had the power to control the lives of dozens of cities. At this moment, the entire Li family was shaken by a piece of news. The young master of the Li family had his cultivation crippled and imprisoned outside the ancient desolate land in the North Region. Not only that, but only 2 Dao integration stage elders who had materialized their Dao bodies returned. This news spread like wildfire across the entire Li family. This was a great humiliation to them. In the main hall of the Li family, it was as dark as night. There wasn't a single ray of light, but there were many pairs of slender and blood-red eyes. Whoosh, 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 there was an ear-piercing sound. Then, bats rushed out like a tide. Every bat was in the shape of a human. They were all members of the Li family who possessed the power of the extreme Yin bat bloodline. As the strange pitch-black mountain range howled, countless members of the Li family who possessed the power of the extreme Yin bat bloodline filled the entire sky. In the center, there were 3 middle-aged men dressed in dark red robes. They were extremely skinny, and their eyes were sunken deep into their eye sockets. Their exposed skin was as white as a corpse's. 200 Dao integration stage cultivators who have materialized their Dao bodies, 1,000 ordinary Dao integration stage cultivators, 20,000 return to void stage cultivators, and 30,000 soul formation advanced stage cultivators. Follow me to the north of the North Region. You can eat as you wish wherever you go. One of the middle-aged men in blood-red robes said. The entire Li family was shaken. The middle-aged man in blood-red robes leaped out. The next moment, he appeared 10,000 meters in the air. His body swayed, and he actually transformed into a huge blood-red bat over 10,000 feet long. Cold air surrounded him, and countless ice shards condensed in the air. The army of over 50,000 people was like a dark cloud. Everywhere they passed, the sound of the desolate land. Li clan, extreme Yin bat bloodline. This clan was extremely bloodthirsty, and they were no different from evil arts. Therefore, they were suppressed and ostracized by many great clans in the ancient desolate land, and they could only settle at the border of the northern region. But even so, ever since they arrived at the edge of the northern region, it had already been like purgatory on earth. This race fed on flesh and blood. Although the members of this race were humanoid, most of them still had the characteristics of the extreme Bat in their bloodline. They were extremely violent. Watching their clansmen leave, one of the two blood-red clothed middle-aged men muttered to himself in a cold voice, "Who would have thought Qianya would actually suffer such a calamity on this trip? If it wasn't for the arrival of the gilded rats, we wouldn't have been so careless. Brother, don't worry. The north of the northern region is lacking in resources. I'm afraid they won't even be able to produce a single human king. This trip will be enough to sweep them all away. Who knows, we might even be able to obtain quite a bit of food to greatly increase our clan's battle prowess," another person said in a deep voice. "Forget it, it's fine as long as Qianya comes back alive. It's not necessarily impossible to treat any kind of injury." On the other hand, the gilded rats must have come under the orders of the Divine Wolf clan. It seems this clan intends to unify the northern region and occupy the primordial god mountain. On the other side, Long Chun had already sunk into cultivation. At this moment, it was as if he was sitting upright in a vast ocean. The azure spirit power was like a tide, layer after layer, surging towards Long Chen's dantian. This was the spirit vein beneath the Tongbi Gate. Although the quality of this spirit vein wasn't as high as the spirit vein in the Tinder Secret Realm, it was still considered a rare opportunity for Long Chun. His golden core coiled and rotated, and the golden patterns on it flickered continuously. Crack crack. A crack suddenly appeared on his golden core, and Long Chen's expression suddenly became joyful. This was the sign of stepping into the fourth level of the Void Return Realm. Golden core experts would have cracks on their golden core before they reached the third level, and when they reached the peak of the Void Return Realm, there would be a total of 3 cracks. Finally, the cracks would disperse the moment they came in contact with the power of law. When the golden core shattered, the soul seed would be born. However, Long Chen also felt that it wasn't easy for him to break through. At this moment, it was already the second day he entered the first spirit vein, and he had absorbed nearly 3 levels of the spirit vein to achieve this effect. However, Long Chen also knew the reason. When he was in the spiritual martial realm, he had condensed the power of 36 dragon elephants and opened up several times more acupoints than ordinary people. Then, when he was in the divine transformation realm, he had condensed a sea of qi of 100,000 miles and stepped into the void return realm. From this, one could imagine how strong this golden core was and how terrifying the power contained in it was. Gently shaking his head, Long Chen sank into cultivation again. The entire spirit vein seemed to be alive, pulsating with his heartbeat. At this moment, on the peak of the godly knife gate, Li Qianya didn't say a word after Long Chen left. This was because he sensed the fierce intent on Jian Shursan's body. He knew that if he looked at Jian Shursan again, he would lose one of his limbs. Everyone present, be it Yi Hailan or the 5 sect masters, was staring blankly at the 5 elements spirit-breaking array left behind by Long Chen. In just 2 days, 5 cultivators in the late-stage Void Return Realm had stepped into the Dao integration stage. This array was simply incomprehensible to them. It was obviously only a king-level array, but it had such a terrifying effect. Although these people were all in the late-stage Void Return Realm and were only 1 step away from stepping into the Dao integration stage, they knew that if it weren't for this array, it would be extremely lucky if 2 of them could step into the Dao integration stage within 3 years. The Void Return Realm and the Dao integration stage were not as simple as they imagined. How difficult was it to comprehend the last trace of the natural order? Only Yen Li wasn't surprised by this array. Back then, Long Chen had used a similar array to form an army in the Black Dragon Empire that could dominate the 9 big empires, Although Li Qianye didn't say anything, the serious sarcasm in his words was extremely strong. This was because he clearly knew the difference between the Li clan and the 5 sect masters. Time flew by. When Long Chen entered the 3rd spirit vein, his cultivation level had just reached the 7th stage Void Return realm. At this moment, no one was curious or shocked that he could devour a spirit vein in just a few days. This was because the 5 sect masters had already heard the news about the Li clan. In fact, this news had not only spread to the 5 sect masters, but also to the entire north of the ancient desolate land. This news caused countless people in the 5 sect masters to panic. Wherever the Li clan went, corpses were strewn everywhere. Even the demonic beasts were devoured. They massacred every city they came across. Even ordinary people and children were devoured. Chapter 273. Rebellion and probing. The entire North region was in chaos. The Li clan was like a dark cloud, and blood was everywhere they went. Haha, we thought there were only some aboriginals in the North region. I didn't expect there to be so much food. Yes, although the people here don't have high cultivation, there are still some low-level bloodline cultivators. They are the best food for the Li clan. Most importantly, there are no other ancient clans here. No one can stop us. Countless Li clan members had wings on their backs, and they were like bloodthirsty beasts. Some of them even had many broken limbs in their hands. To them, this was the best canteen. Before long, tens of thousands of Li clan members stopped at a small town. The citizens counting money outside the town trembled and knelt at the entrance of the town, their eyes full of panic. Kiki, one by one, the Li clan members landed quickly, and all of them had bloodthirsty smiles on their faces. Everyone, this is the gift prepared by our town. There are 50,000 superior-grade spirit stones, 100 beasts, 700 pills. Everything is offered. The person who spoke was an old man with white hair. Behind him were dozens of soul formation cultivators. Behind them were women and children in veterinary clothes, as well as burly men with fearful faces. The extreme Bat that was thousands of meters in the sky didn't even look down. It only transmitted an indifferent order. The last meal will arrive at the so-called 5 great sects in a few days. The real feast will only begin after we rescue Qianye. Time to eat. Haha, I haven't been so indulgent in a long time. Gift? What a joke. Without the interference of the ancient clans in the ancient desolate land, this is the Li clan's heaven. Leave that child to me and a few women. Countless Li clan members that looked like blood-colored bats swarmed toward the small town like locusts. Shrill and helpless cries rang out in the surrounding area. When the entire Li clan left, the entire town was left with blood and corpses that resembled dead trees. Sunrise and sunset. The Li clan was called the Blood Clan in the North region, and this news spread throughout the entire region. More and more people headed toward the 5 major sections. In the hearts of everyone in the 9 big empires, only the 5 major sects could give them a chance of survival. Within the 5 major sects, the 5 mountains no longer had the spiritual light of the past. The cranes were nowhere to be seen, and the spiritual light had dissipated. There were only lines of formation patterns that covered the sky. An array formation spanned across the 5 major mountains. Long Chen had already left the 4th spirit vein and was about to step into the spirit vein below the 5th peak. But today, the 5 major sect leaders stopped him. No, rather than calling it 5 great sect masters, it would be better to call it 3 great sects, because 2 of them were missing. Long Chen's face sank as he said coldly, "The sect leaders of the Godly Saber sect and the Tongbi sect have escaped? The 5 major sects, the 5 major sects, and the Shadows, and Sumps." Now, almost the entire hunting Shadow Nation has fled to the abandoned city in the east. Even so, nearly a dozen cities have been slaughtered. The 5 major sects are losing control of the situation. What the 3 said made Long Chen frown. The Li clans made everyone lose their will to fight. Long Chun stared at the three of them and said, "Open the array formation. Let those who want to leave at will. But the array will be closed permanently after 3 days. According to the time, the Li clan's arrival will be imminent." After a pause, Long Chun continued, "Today, the shadow hunting nation is in trouble. If it succumbs to the Li clans, the 9 big empires under the 5 major sects will become the shadow hunting nation tomorrow." Long Chun did not say anything else and went straight into the 5th spirit vein. However, the moment he entered the spirit vein, an extremely powerful blade light slashed toward his head. Unfortunately, the fluctuation of spiritual power was easily captured by Long Chen's strong divine telekinesis. The long sword in Long Chen's hand moved slightly, and the powerful blade light dissipated instantly. Long Chen stared inside and said calmly, "Lord of the Godly Knife Clan, it seems like you're not willing to leave like this. Do you want to use my head to exchange for a chance to live? But you seem to have forgotten that I'm the Purple Star emissary of the Dark Star organization." The Lord of the Godly Knife Clan walked out slowly with a gloomy face. He said coldly, "Are the 3 of you still immersed in the dream that he can kill a human king and destroy the Li clan? Kill him with me now and send Li Qianya back to the Li clan. Maybe there's still a chance for the countries under the 5 major sects to survive." The 3 lords of the Wanjian sect, the Divine Vein clan, and the 100 Smelting clan were silent. They neither agreed nor refused. They did not know whether it was right or wrong today. The rumors about the Li clan and the Li clan were too terrifying. Upon hearing this, Long Chen said calmly, "Don't make your cowardice sound so dignified. Even if you don't resist today, will the Li clan allow the 5 major sects to exist forever in the future? Maybe, but maybe you'll only need to hand over tens of thousands of masculine men, thousands of virgin boys, and women for them to enjoy every month. Then, they can enter this place and kill to their heart's content." The 3 lords of the Wanjian sect frowned slightly. They knew that Long Chen's words were not false. In fact, it was even more terrifying. Although the news that came recently made them tremble in fear of the Li clan's strength, it also made them understand the brutality of the Li clan. The people who died today were only a few cities. In the future, they might be reared as livestock forever. However, did Long Chen really have the strength to lead them out of this place? The 3 of them did not know, so they did not make a move. They wanted to see if Long Chen's combat power after absorbing the 4 mineral veins was as he said. The Lord of the Godly Knife Clan saw that the other 3 had no intention of making a move. He stared at Long Chen and laughed coldly. "Let me expose your conspiracy. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't be fighting to the death with the Li clan and the Li clan." The Lord of the Godly Knife Clan wanted to kill Long Chen personally and send him to the Li clan. Long Chen looked at the Lord of the Godly Knife Clan calmly and said, "You're no match for me. If you want to leave, then go ahead. I don't want to waste a second on you." The Lord of the Godly Knife Clan laughed coldly and shouted, "The Li clan and the Li clan will be here in a few days. You've been consuming pills every day. I want to see how much you've grown." The long knife was like a rainbow, piercing towards Long Chen's neck. Around him, streaks of dark brown light gathered. This was the power of rules. Chapter 274. Soul of the Heavens, the sect leader of the Godly Saber sect, was at the pinnacle of the Tao integration stage. He held his sword horizontally, but his expression did not change at all. His figure moved and instantly disappeared before everyone's eyes. The eyes of the 3 leaders of the Wanjian sect froze. However, when Long Chen reappeared, he was already standing behind the sect leader of the Godly Saber sect. His sword slowly landed on the neck of the sect leader of the Godly Saber sect. "Do you still want to continue the test now?" Gasp. Everyone gasped and stared at Long Chen. He had defeated the sect leader of the Godly Saber sect in an instant. The sect leader of the Godly Saber sect was horrified. He could not stop trembling. He had never expected Long Chen to undergo such a drastic change in just over 10 days. Everyone looked at the thunderous wings on Long Chen's back, and their hearts were filled with shock. He had not reached the Tao integration stage yet. But he could easily defeat a sect leader of the late-stage Tao integration stage. The sect leader of the Wanjian sect's voice trembled. He could not help but exclaim, That's a 9th-grade divine-level transformative movement technique. Not only that, but his bloodline ability as well. That pair of thunderous wings gave him a speed comparable to a Tao integration stage cultivator. The sect leader of the Divine Pulse sect said in a low voice. The sect leader of the Godly Saber sect felt a chill on his neck. His face turned purple as he said coldly, He's not at the Tao integration stage yet? What's the use of defeating me? I haven't even formed my Tao body. I'm afraid I can't even defeat a late-stage Tao integration stage cultivator from the Li clan. But do you know how many people from the Li clan came this time? There are at least 1,000 Tao integration stage cultivators, and hundreds of them have Tao bodies. Upon hearing the sect leader of the Godly Saber sect, Long Chen frowned slightly and said indifferently, Are you done? Since you don't think it's possible, I'll spare your life today. I'll let you witness this impossible battle in a few days. Bam! With a loud bang, Long Chen kicked him down from the sky. He said to the 3 leaders of the Wanjian sect in a deep voice, Lock him up. If you want to leave out of fear, now is your best chance. The 3 of them looked at each other and shook their heads at Long Chen. The 3 of us will not leave. What you said is right. Even if we leave today, the blood of the 9 great empires will flow like rivers in the future. Long Chen snorted coldly. Without another word, he turned around and entered the 5th spirit vein. He had no interest in defeating the sect leader of the Absolute Saber sect. Now that he had reached the Return to Void Pinnacle stage, he was only one step away from condensing a soul seed and stepping into the Tao integration stage. With his current cultivation base, he could use peak stage divine rank martial arts technique. Coupled with the strength of his Dharch body, he didn't even need to fear any Tao integration stage cultivators, but he knew that this wasn't enough. This was because his enemy was not just one person, but the entire ancient Li clan. Among them, there were even 3 human kings. Today, when I completely step into the Tao integration stage and condense a soul seed, I also need to condense a Tao body at the same time. Long Chen said as he popped a pill into his mouth. This pill was refined from the soul seed of the late-stage Tao integration stage cultivator who had condensed a Tao body. It could help him condense a soul seed and a Tao body. The 5th spirit vein also started to dry up. After absorbing the energy from the first 4 spirit veins, Long Chen's body didn't show any signs of being full. Instead, it was like a black hole that kept devouring everything. He sat there for another 3 days. Recently, the entire sect protection spell formation was completely shut down. In fact, not many people left the 5 great sects in these 3 days. Many people gradually understood. Ordinary Tao integration stage cultivators might still have a chance of survival if they left the 5 great sections. However, those below the Tao integration stage would only die faster if they left the 5 great sections. Not only that, but the sword strike Long Chen used to defeat the sect leader of the Divine Saber sect had also spread throughout the 5 great sections. It could be said without a doubt that Long Chen was the hope of everyone here at this moment. The shining spell formation gave them the last bit of courage. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The timing was just right. When night fell on the 3rd day, a blood-red cloud floated over. Upon closer inspection, one would realize that this blood-red cloud belonged to the Li clan. A terrifying blood-red fog was emitted from their bodies. Everyone's faces were filled with violence. They had killed too many people these days. The blood bat, who was thousands of feet tall, spoke in human language. His voice was like a loud bell. Hand over our young master, and we will spare your lives today. The mighty voice set off boundless waves of air that swept through the mountains in all directions. The power of a human king was not concealed at all. The space around the 1,000-foot body trembled. It was as if spiritual light was being annihilated with every breath. Countless people in the 5 great mountains turned pale with horror. Their faces were full of fear as they fled in panic. Many divine transformation stage cultivators even prostrated themselves on the ground under the strong aura, trembling. On the divine saber peak, Li Qianye suddenly stood up. He couldn't help but shout excitedly, "This is my third uncle." He had already become a human king 10 years ago. Now, let him go, ah! Li Qianye's voice stopped abruptly. His entire right arm flew up and blood spurted out. His face instantly twisted. The leaders of the 4 great sects turned pale with horror. They looked at Jian Shisan in a daze. Jian Shisan's voice was as cold as ice. He said coldly, "Master once said that if you say a word, one of your limbs will be broken." Li Qianye spat out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't help but spasm violently. However, he didn't dare to make another sound. Not far from him, the leader of the Divine Saber sect, who was bound, shook his head and said, "Did you see that? That is the Divine King expert with the ancient bloodline, the extreme Een Bat. Which one of you can take one move from him? Who can defeat the tens of thousands of people behind him? Today, we are all going to die here." The leader of the Wanjian sect unsheathed his sword and slashed it across the leader of the Divine Saber sect's throat. Murderous intent appeared in his eyes. Looking at the leader's eyes that were gradually losing their light, he said coldly, "Then you will still walk in front of me. Today, since we are still the leaders of the 5 great sects, there is no way out." The 3 leaders looked determined, but they sighed in their hearts. Out of the 5 great sect leaders, only 3 were left today. One was dead and the other escaped. However, they couldn't escape today, and there was no way to escape. Behind them was not the array, nor was it the pavilion, but the hundreds of thousands of disciples of the 5 great sects. Rumble! At this moment, a deafening sound came from the 5th spirit vein. Invisible ripples spread out in all directions. Countless spiritual lights soared into the sky, and thunderstorms swept up one after another. Immediately, the Li clan ancient clansmen, both inside and outside the array, suddenly fell into a daze. They covered their ears tightly. An inexplicable roar of a beast seemed to be accompanied by the endless power of the rules that entered their hearts. Everyone felt a tremor that came from their souls. This terrifying aura had nothing to do with their cultivation, but it came completely from their souls. At the same time, within the heaven-defying great clans of the ancient desolate land, 3 figures soared into the sky, reaching tens of thousands of meters away. They bowed in the air and knelt on one knee. Their gazes seemed to pass through space and looked towards the extreme north. "I am the war soul of the Azure bloodline. I respectfully welcome the soul of the Azure bloodline. I am the war soul of the Azure bloodline." Chapter 275. At the time of World War I Longchen slowly walked out of the spirit meridian. He had already reached the Tao integration realm. He seemed to have sensed the ancient barren land and the appearance of the divine beast fighting soul. He could not help but smile. Ao Tsangqiong, Yi Hailan, and the others immediately appeared beside Longchen. The 3 clan leaders also turned into light rainbows and rushed over. The few of them stared at Longchen in a daze. When they saw that Longchen was fine, they heaved a sigh of relief. That beast roar was too terrifying, but they didn't know that the beast roar was the cry of Longchen's soul. It was a dragon's roar. At this moment, Changchen's golden core shattered, and his soul seed appeared. There were tiny scales on it, and a dragon's soul was swimming in his dantian. "They're finally here. Human kings and tens of thousands of ancient clan disciples," Longchen muttered as he stared outside the array. As soon as he finished speaking, he led everyone to the edge of the formation. In the sky, the human king's eyes suddenly turned cold. His body flashed with a monstrous divine light, and he turned back into his human form. He stood in front of Long Chen and said coldly, "Hand over my clan's young master." Long Chen sneered. With a thought, Jian Shi-san on the Shindao peak immediately grabbed Li Qianye and rushed toward Long Chen. Outside the formation, the Li family's human king saw that Li Qianye was in such a miserable state. Even his arm was broken. His entire body emitted a murderous intent. The human king of the Li clan stretched out his hand and a huge spatial crack appeared. Then, a hand suddenly reached in and reappeared above Li Qianye. Jian Shi-san's body could not stop retreating. In the blink of an eye, Li Qianye was about to be forcibly taken out of the array through the space crack. "Your Excellency, please let go." However, at this moment, Long Chen unsheathed his sword. A cold light flashed past, and the right hand of the Li clan's clan lord that had traveled through space was sliced off at the wrist. Li Qianye landed on the ground again. Outside the matrix, the Li clan's human king's face was cold. His broken right hand was instantly restored to its original state. Human monarch experts comprehended nomological laws. Their physical bodies were immortal, and their souls were indestructible. They could easily traverse space. In fact, a small number of path integration experts could also traverse space. However, they had to at least comprehend part of the nomological power and condense a Tao body. Otherwise, they would not be able to withstand the tearing force of space. For example, when the Zhouyin ancient people brought Qing Xian back to the ancient desolate land, they were Tao integration experts. This was enough to show how powerful the Zhouyin ancient people were. They could travel through space with their Tao integration abilities. However, regardless of whether it was a Tao integration stage cultivator, a human king, or someone even more powerful, none of them dared to casually cross the spatial rift. Unless they could accurately locate the spatial rift or guide the spatial rift, it was extremely easy for them to get lost in the chaotic space. The Li family's Wang glared fiercely at Long Chen, a trace of killing intent flashing through his eyes. He suddenly said in a cold voice, "What do you want? Just say it as long as you let Qianye go." A faint smile appeared on Long Chen's lips. He knew that as long as Li Qianye made it out alive, what awaited them would be crazy revenge. This Li family's ancient clan's words were nothing but nonsense. 300,000 supreme-grade spirit stones and the exact location of the Li family's ancient clan. Long Chen sneered. The Li family's Wang's eyes suddenly narrowed. He stared at Long Chen and said, 300,000 supreme-grade spirit stones is fine, but I will not give you the exact location. Every ancient clan would have many precautions against their own clan. If not for the clan's members, even if they were human monarchs who knew the target's location, they would not be able to directly enter the clan by tearing through space. However, Long Chen wanted the Li family's exact location. This made the Wang family's Wang sense a trace of danger. One had to know that the person who left from the 5 major sects had personally said that this young man in front of him was the Purple Star emissary of the Dark Star Organization. If the Dark Star Organization could freely tear through space to enter and exit the Li family's ancient clan, the consequences would be unimaginable. It might even lead to the annihilation of the entire clan. Long Chen shook his head, secretly thinking that the Li family's people were not idiots. However, he just casually glanced and said, 300,000 supreme-grade spirit stones. Throw it over. The Li family's ancient clan seemed to have been prepared. 300,000 supreme-grade spirit stones was not a lot for the Li family, but if it could really be exchanged for Li Qianye, it would be worth it. The space was torn again, and a storage ring appeared in Long Chen's hand. However, when the Li family's Wang saw the smile on Long Chen's face, his face darkened. He said coldly, "It seems that you have no intention of letting Li Qianye go. However, do you think you can still escape with 300,000 supreme-grade spirit stones?" Just as the Li family's Wang said, when Long Chen took the 300,000 supreme-grade spirit stones, He killed Li Qianye in an instant with the sword in his right hand. He did not even bat an eyelid. The people from the 5 major sects did not even dare to breathe loudly. Their faces were full of confusion. The 3 sect masters were also full of respect for Long Chen at this moment. No matter how high Long Chen's cultivation level was, just his calmness and methods in the face of a human king expert were enough to convince them. Buzz. As Long Chen killed Li Qianye, countless Li family's ancient clan members, who had transformed into human bats, screamed and began to attack the array. Blast open the array and turn everyone inside into blood food. These people are enough to turn all the Void Return clansmen into Dao integration cultivators this time. How dare a bunch of barbarians make an enemy of the Li family? Kill them all. Countless attacks from the Li family's ancient clan members landed on the array. The powerful impact caused the soil on the 5 mountains to fly and ripples to spread out on the light screen. Long Chen's body shook. His cold voice rumbled like thunder and spread throughout the 5 major sections. He said, "All Dao integration cultivators, step forward. Today is the day of battle." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. As Long Chen's voice fell, Lui and Yanli appeared in front of the array with close to 100 people. These people were all Dao integration cultivators. The Li family's ancient clan members sneered. "Is this where your confidence comes from? Why don't you disperse the array and let's fight?" "Ha ha." Long Chen did not answer. The 100 people behind him, including the 3 sect masters, leaped out and actually walked straight out of the array from both sides. Long Chen also walked out step by step toward the Li family's ancient clan members. This scene made the Li family's ancient clan members look at each other. The Li family's Wang frowned and said, "You're really coming out to die?" In his eyes, if Long Chen and the others had defended the array, they could have held on for 2 or 3 days. Now that they had walked out like idiots, it was tantamount to suicide. However, Long Chen said indifferently, "If we don't fight, it's hard to say whether we'll live or die." Instantly, countless ear-piercing laughter came from the Li family's ancient clan members. The Li family's Wang also sneered and said, "Close to 100 Dao integration cultivators compared to tens of thousands of Li family's ancient clan members. You're just a joke. Kill them all." Chapter 276. Battle of the Human Kings. Countless disciples of the 5 major sects cried out in shock. Outside the sects, the Li clan and the Dao integration stage disciples of the 5 major sects were instantly annihilated. There were even a few Dao integration stage cultivators who charged toward Long Chen. However, as soon as they got within 100 feet of him, a line of blood appeared on their necks, and they died without knowing why. The Li clan leader's expression changed. He could clearly sense that Long Chen was only at the Dao integration stage, and his aura was unstable, as if he had just stepped into the Dao integration stage. However, he could casually kill Dao integration stage cultivators of the same level, and even late-stage Dao integration stage cultivators. His combat power was truly terrifying. Bam bam! Just as the Li clan leader was still in shock, a series of deafening sounds came from behind him. Every sound was accompanied by the death of more than a dozen Dao integration stage cultivators. The scene of flesh and blood flying everywhere made his heart tremble. Dao integration stage cultivators were the mainstays of a clan like the Li clan, and such a way of dying really pained him. Bam bam bam! After more than a dozen sounds, dozens of Dao integration stage cultivators and close to 100 soul formation stage cultivators from the Li clan died. All of a sudden, the members of the Li clan actually retreated like the receding tide. All of their faces were filled with astonishment as they cried out involuntarily, "This group of people are all crazy. There are clearly less than 100 of them, but they are fighting separately. The moment they are surrounded, they actually self-destruct." The power of a Dao integration stage cultivator's self-destruction was enough to plunge everything within a radius of a few hundred meters into a storm. At close range, People of the same level would completely lose their ability to fight even if they did not die. In an instant, the Tao integration stage cultivators of the three major sects all had bloodshot eyes and were bathed in blood. At this moment, they had only been away from the array for a dozen breaths. They were like people who were about to die in a swamp. With close to 100 of them against tens of thousands of cultivators, they could only create ripples in the swamp when they were about to die. Long Chen looked at the Li clan leader and said coldly, "How is it? My heart aches." More than 1,000 Tao integration stage cultivators, including hundreds of people who have materialized their Tao bodies and tens of thousands of soul formation stage cultivators. Why are they not fighting now? The Li clan leader's face turned ashen. He thought to himself that Long Chen and the others were simply committing suicide. However, on the other hand, he hated the two Tao integration stage elders to the core. There were only 20 to 30 Tao integration experts in the land of the 5 major sections. Now, it seemed that there were more than 100 of them. Moreover, there should be dozens of them in the array formation. Even if these people were no match for them, they would still suffer great losses if they continued to attack in such a crazy manner. All of you back off. Today, I alone can destroy your 5 great sects. Li Clan's Wang shouted. As his voice fell, countless members of the Li clan retreated rapidly and stood 100 meters behind him. The Li clan's Wang stretched out his hand and grabbed at the air. The void shattered as a long saber appeared in his hand. As soon as the saber appeared, it slashed through the air in an instant. Tens of thousands of blade lights covered the sky and covered the sun. Everywhere they passed, the space cracked inch by inch. Amidst the sharpness, it was as if a mountain was pressing down. Before the saber fell, everyone behind Long Chen and the countless disciples in the array formation felt the space around them compressing. It was as if a huge mountain was going to crush heaven and earth. The 5 great mountains collapsed under the immense pressure and turned into ruins with a loud bang. The Tao integration experts behind Long Chen retreated under the lead of the 3 sect leaders. They were about to step into the array formation when they finally felt the power of a human monarch. Although it looked like an ordinary saber, just the word rule alone could kill countless Tao integration experts. Long Chen, back off. Back off quickly. This person is not someone you can fight. The 3 sect leaders who originally had high hopes for Long Chen now shouted at Long Chen. However, Long Chen stood in the same spot and did not move. He stood in the air, and the power of lightning appeared around him. His bloodline was activated to the extreme, and he transformed into the body of a 3-eyed thunder dragon. At the same time, his entire body emitted a divine light that was hundreds of meters long. A vast and mighty aura emanated from his body, and his cold eyes seemed to look down on the heavens. Divine technique, heaven-shaking sword roar. As Long Chen roared, he pointed his sword to the sky. A beam of sword light soared into the sky and pierced the heavens. Countless sword roars reverberated in the air as if countless waves of air were vibrating. The condensed sword light instantly fell into the saber shadow. It was as if a huge saber had pierced through a mountain and pierced through it. Splat! The tsunami-like waves of air swept through heaven and earth. Countless members of the Li family behind the human monarch retreated thousands of meters under this powerful aura. The members of the 5 great sects also felt the strong force in the air. They could not even stand properly. Sword light. Saber light. Countless spatial cracks appeared and completely disappeared into the sky. The entire scene seemed to have come to a standstill. It was so quiet that it was frightening. The human monarch of the Li family stared fixedly at Long Chen. He said coldly, "Who exactly are you? You're only at the early stage of the Tao integration stage, and you're actually able to fight against me, a human monarch. You're also a Purple Star emissary from the Dark Star organization. Could you be a prodigy from a first-rate ancient clan in the ancient desolate land?" Long Chen's sword strike actually made the Li family's monarch not dare to attack again. Long Chen's sword strike made him tremble in fear. Such a young man actually possessed a sword technique at the late stage of the divine level. His spiritual energy was even more shocking. There was also his strange bloodline power, Long Chen sneered. I'm neither a prodigy from a first-rate ancient clan nor a direct disciple of the Dark Star organization. However, against you, the ability of the Tao integration stage is enough. The Li family's monarch's face completely darkened. He knew that no matter what, he could not let Long Chen leave alive today. He even had to kill everyone here. Long Chen's combat power made him feel extremely pressured. With such terrifying talent, even in the ancient desolate land, he was probably comparable to the Taoists of the reclusive ancient clans. If he did not get rid of him today, there would be endless trouble in the future. Then today I'll get rid of you first. After that, I'll kill all the living beings here. The Li family's monarch's voice was as cold as ice. As his voice fell, the long saber moved again. He roared, "Condense the laws of the mountains, suppress." As his voice fell, his entire person actually disappeared into thin air. When he reappeared, he was already right above Long Chen. He held the long saber in his hand and slashed downwards. With a swing of the saber, countless saber shadows turned into tens of thousands of saber shadows. With a flash of spiritual light, mysterious laws filled the heavens and the earth. The tens of thousands of saber shadows instantly condensed into a sharp saber mountain. Wherever the saber mountain passed, a sharp gap was forcibly cut open in the space like a thin piece of paper. The entire saber mountain forcibly suppressed Long Chen. This saber mountain caused the entire sky to darken. Vaguely, Long Chen's long saber suddenly left his hand and actually expanded with the wind. Condense, my sword's intent, transform into the laws of heaven and earth. Buzz. Chapter 277. Eye of Thunder Punishment. 5 long swords soared into the sky. The members of the 5 major sects and the Li clan turned pale with fright as they stared at Long Chen, who was below the mountain formed by the huge sword shadow. He was covered in silver-white scales and had a pair of wings on his back. The lightning around him was like fire, and he emitted a 1,000-foot-long divine glow. The 5 divine swords sliced through the vast mountain at an unstoppable speed. Boom! The swords and sabers met, and the lightning around Long Chen was swept back. Divine glow flickered. Long Chen fell from the sky, and the ground sank 1,000 feet. The Li clan's Wang clan cultivator flew back 1,000 feet. This is really just a Tao integration stage cultivator. Even a Tao integration stage cultivator who has materialized a Tao body can't fight a human king. The Li clan's members couldn't help but feel their mouths go dry. Along the way they had seen too many people. In their eyes they were nothing more than food. Even those of the same level couldn't withstand a single blow. But now, Long Chen's combat power had already exceeded their understanding. The Li clan's Wang clan cultivator exhaled, and his breathing was heavy. He said in a low voice, "You actually have such a deep understanding of the power of rules at the early stage of the Tao integration stage. I really underestimated you." Buzz. As his voice fell, the blood-red glow around him shone brightly, and he once again transformed into the extreme Een Bat. His slender and huge eyes stared at Long Chen, and he said in a human voice, "Bloodline ability, Crimson Bat Roar." The body of a 1,000-foot-long beast was his bloodline body. He, who had reached the human king level, had already completely awakened the inheritance in his bloodline. Bloodline ability could be awakened by almost all bloodline inheritances. Of course, it was rare for low-grade bloodlines below the 5 major sects to awaken such abilities. Formless sound waves came from the huge bat's mouth, but the space was terrifyingly silent. The Li clan's members all transformed into their bloodline bodies, and their flat ears covered their entire heads. Bang, bang, bang! Blood exploded between the mountains. Within 100 miles, the disciples and the beasts outside actually all exploded and turned into minced meat. At the same time, the array formation of the 5 major sects trembled at an extremely terrifying frequency. The Tao integration experts who presided over the array formation fell down one after another, and cracks spread across the array formation. The disciples who were close to the array were instantly turned into a pool of blood. They had almost no chance to react. Long Chen was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. The scales all over his body instantly cracked. His eyes turned blood red in an instant, as if he was enduring great pain. Bloodline ability? I have one too. Long Chen resisted the sound waves that were about to tear him apart and suddenly raised his head. In the name of the heavens, I command the power of lightning punishment. Lightning eye open. As soon as Long Chen finished speaking, he spat out a mouthful of blood, and the lightning around his body rolled back with a rumble. The lightning mark at the center of his brows blossomed with boundless lightning, and he actually slowly opened his third eye. However, this eye was filled with lightning marks. It was like a spiderweb of lightning, and it was silvery white in color. Boom! Crack! Thunderous roars instantly entered everyone's ears, tearing apart the formless sound waves. The dark clouds that filled the sky instantly turned into rolling thunderbolts. It was daytime between heaven and earth. The light of the lightning seemed to have replaced the light of the scorching sun. Boom! Boom! Regardless of whether it was the disciples of the Li family or the 5 major sects, more and more people trembled and fell to the ground in an instant. Kill! Long Chen roared in a low voice. As soon as Long Chen's voice fell, the lightning punishment in the sky suddenly descended. The Li family Wang, who had transformed into his bloodline body, was instantly drowned in the sea of lightning. The power of lightning punishment lasted for a full 10 breaths. Long Chen stood on the ground. His surroundings were already charred black, and it was extremely silent. He could not stop panting, and his entire body was covered in wounds. The lightning dissipated, and only white bones were left. However, his soul was not destroyed. Pieces of flesh and blood began to appear out of thin air. Human monarchs' bodies were immortal, and their souls were indestructible. This was why human monarchs were the foundation of the various major ancient clans in the ancient Desolation Land. A human monarch had a lifespan of hundreds of years, and his soul and body were almost immortal. Swoosh! Long Chen endured the injuries on his body. In an instant, he soared into the sky again. With a flap of his wings, he appeared beside the Li family Wang as if he had teleported. His sword was like lightning, and it forcefully dispersed the condensed body once again. The speed of his sword had already exceeded the recovery speed of his flesh and blood, and the light around his body was dispersed inch by inch. An illusory soul appeared out of thin air and enveloped his bones. He knew that if this continued, he would be tortured to death by Long Chen sooner or later. Long Chen's speed was too fast, and his sword was filled with the power of the natural order. He stared at Long Chen and said coldly, "You wanted to destroy my body, so I will destroy your soul seed." The illusory soul actually gave up on the bones at this moment. It opened its mouth wide and wanted to swallow Long Chen. However, Long Chen's sword shattered its bones. He said coldly, "You can't destroy my soul." Buzz! A vast amount of soul power soared into the sky, straight to the 9 heavens. Long Chen's divine consciousness was unprecedentedly powerful. A shrill cry reverberated in the air. The Li clan king's soul around Long Chen actually retreated rapidly, as if it was burned by a raging fire. How can you have such a powerful soul and divine consciousness? The Li clan king's illusory soul flickered as if it was severely injured and would dissipate at any time. At this moment, the Li clan king was really a little scared. He had never expected this young man to have such terrifying talent. Even his bloodline ability was enough to crush him. This also meant that Long Chen's inherited bloodline was far superior to his. It was probably not just one level higher. The Li clan king has been defeated. He has been defeated by a young man of the Tao integration stage. How is this possible? Kill them. This person is definitely an arrow at the end of its flight. We still have close to 1,000 Tao integration and 10,000 return to void cultivators. This person has such talent. If he grows up in the future, the Li clan will have a great enemy. Today we must get rid of him. The members of the Li clan flew forward one by one, but the Li clan king's soul stopped them with a wave of his hand. This was because behind Long Chen, hundreds of thousands of people from the 5 major sects were glowing with spirit light. Their battle intent soared to the sky. Most of these people were only at the soul formation stage. Only the sect masters and elders were at the Tao integration stage. There were also many personal disciples who were barely at the return to void stage. But now, Long Chen was not dead, and the Li clan king had been defeated. Retreat. We have lost today. The next time we meet again, it will be the day this place is destroyed. The Li clan king shouted coldly. He turned around and led the tens of thousands of Li clan members away unwillingly. The members of the 5 major sects stared at the backs of the Li clan members as they left. Their bodies were even trembling. They had never thought that this battle would end like this. Long Chen had really defeated the human king. Lui, all elders of the 100 smelting clans array formation division, reactivate the array. This battle has just begun. Long Chen's eyes were cold. He swallowed an elixir, and the spirit light around his body surged again. The moment he finished speaking, the lightning around him actually dissipated, and he hid in the darkness. Then, he disappeared from everyone's sight. Everyone was puzzled. They did not know what Long Chen wanted to do and why he left. Chapter 278. Mass Assassination. The night grew darker. The tens of thousands of members of the Li family were all silent. This was a far cry from their excitement when they first arrived. They never imagined that they would lose to a young Tao integration stage cultivator. The Li family leader's divine sense floated in the void as he said coldly, "If this battle continues, even if we win, I'm afraid we'll all be wiped out. Moreover, that Long Chen might still be able to put up a fight. I've already memorized the location of this place. After we get rid of the gilded rats, our 3 human kings and many Tao integration stage cultivators can directly cross space and come here." Only then did everyone's expressions improve. They also knew that their family was still facing the threat of the gilded rats and couldn't focus on dealing with the so-called 5 major sections. However, their defeat this time was really frustrating. As they talked, they didn't realize that countless black figures were traversing the void and the earth in the dark night. They didn't even realize that dozens of people had already died during their flight. Deep in the night, a chill suddenly struck the hearts of every member of the Li family. All the ancient members of the Li family stopped in their tracks, and even the Tao integration stage cultivators couldn't help but tremble. Their backs were already drenched in cold sweat. This was because almost 1,000 of them had already died. Only after almost 1,000 of them had died did they realize that they had already been ambushed along the way. Third Master, what should we do? It seems to be the Dark Star organization. Why is it like this? Isn't that person just an ordinary Purple Star envoy? A middle-aged Tao integration stage cultivator said in a trembling voice, his face pale. The Li clan's Wang Shuhuan was also motionless. He had never thought that he would be ambushed when he left. Only now did he know that he had completely lost this battle. Long Chen had long planned for this moment to be a massacre. Now that he had lost his physical body and only his divine sense remained, it wasn't enough to protect so many members of the Li family. Even he himself might be in danger. Swish, swish, swish. 3 streaks of black light shuttled through the darkness. In just an instant, the middle-aged Tao integration stage cultivator and the 2 people beside him fell from the sky. Their bodies were instantly ignited with black flames. Dark fire needle. Just how many Purple Star assassins have come? The Li family king's anger soared to the sky, but his surroundings were completely silent. He had no idea where his opponent was. In the darkness, Long Chen suddenly stopped and walked out from the shadows. Not far from him, there were 20 purple star emissaries behind a rock. This meant that there were at least 2,000 dark star assassins here. Ao Tsangqiong stood in front of the 20 purple star emissaries with an ugly expression. When Long Chen walked over, his whole face turned black and he asked in a deep voice, "You're from Dark Star? These people are here because of me?" Long Chen smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Big brother, you're thinking too much. I only got the position of Purple Star Emissary after you and I met the Purple Star Assassin that day. It's not like you don't know about the appearance of that ghost from the 5 great sects. My relationship with you is not a matter of the organization." After hearing Long Chen's teasing words, Ao Tsangqiong's brows relaxed slightly. He then asked, "Then what's the matter with these people?" The 20 purple star emissaries couldn't help but lower their heads and smile bitterly. However, Long Chen looked at Ao Tsangqiong innocently and said, "Naturally, I found them to deal with the ancient Li family. The 300,000 top-grade spirit stones are the reward. Don't tell me you want to see them return to the Li family and then come back to kill countless lives in the northern region? If that's the case, it's better to wipe them out in one fell swoop. Leave the rest to me." Hearing Long Chen's words, Ao Tsangqiong was speechless for a moment. He turned around and left. He only said to the 20 purple star emissaries behind him, "These people killed so many people in the northern region. Today it's karmic revenge. However, if anyone enters the ancient desolate land to destroy the ancient Li family, don't blame me for being merciless." The 20 purple star emissaries nodded. Facing this young master who had a completely different personality from his father, they were also quite helpless. However, after Ao Tsangqiong left, their eyes were as cold as ice. They said to Long Chen, 300,000 top-grade spirit stones in exchange for the lives of these people. It's enough. However, this is a big deal for the Dark Star organization. The Purple Star emissaries smiled knowingly. When the ancient Li family came to the 5 great sects, Long Chen's Purple Star assassins immediately sent back a message. Their main mission in the 5 great sects was to protect Ao Tsangqiong. If it wasn't for Long Chen stopping them, the ancient Li family probably wouldn't have been able to reach the 5 great sects at all. In fact, the entire ancient Li family would have been turned into a land of death by now. In front of the Dark Star organization, a small family like the ancient Li family was not even worth mentioning. In the ancient desolate land, assassins were a feared profession. At this moment, the Dark Star organization was enough to make the entire ancient desolate land tremble. Long Chen stared at the Purple Star emissaries present and said, "This was originally a transaction. I will naturally hand over the 300,000 top-grade spirit stones. Now let's get rid of all these people." This was the difference between Long Chen and Ao Tsangqiong. When it came to people who deserved to be killed, he didn't care what methods he used. The 20 Purple Star emissaries and the 2,000 or so Purple Star assassins began a ghost-like slaughter. They weren't in a hurry. When the ancient Li family members were all turned into corpses, the Dark Star organization had only lost 100 people. Many of the ancient Li family members had never even seen a single Purple Star assassin. The end of this large-scale mission took a total of 13 days. When the 20 Purple Star emissaries said their goodbyes, they stared at Long Chen as if they were looking at a monster. The leader said to Long Chen, "When you reach the ancient desolate land, remember to report to the Dark Star organization. Your assassination skills have already surpassed the Purple Star emissaries and reached the level of a Blood Star assassin. With you by the young master's side, we can be completely at ease." Long Chen nodded and handed over the storage rings containing 130,000 top-grade spirit stones to them. Everyone smiled at each other. Although they took the storage rings, they each threw a small bag to Long Chen. Long Chen looked at the storage rings of the Li family members in the bag and smiled bitterly. He turned around and hid in the darkness. Seeing Long Chen leave, the 20 Purple Star emissaries couldn't help but sigh. If this child wholeheartedly devotes himself to the path of an assassin, he might become the second Dark Star assassin of our Dark Star organization. When he reaches the ancient desolate land, we'll introduce him to the young master. After all, he is the young master's sworn brother. We shouldn't make any more moves during this period of time. The young master is too repulsed by the Dark Star organization. Long Chen is definitely not an ordinary person. His strength is comparable to the Taoists of the ancient desolate land. Nothing will happen to him. On the other side, in the Li family of the ancient desolate land, 2 human king experts were stopped when they returned. The old man knelt on the ground and said in a trembling voice, "First Master, Second Master. The life tablets of tens of thousands of people who went to the north of the northern region were all shattered, including the human king Third Master." Chapter 279. Primordial Order. The Li clan fell into chaos. The Li clan master was a brother of 3, and they were all at the human king realm. However, they didn't expect that a human king and tens of thousands of people would all die in the north of the north region. Not only that, but the 2 remaining human kings of the Li clan looked terrible. When they were fighting with the Gilded Rat clan, they received a message from the Li clan's 3rd brother. There were only 2 words in the message: Dark Star. The 2 of them knew that the Dark Star organization was not something the Li clan could provoke. "Boss, what should we do? If the 5 major sects really have such a close relationship with the Dark Star organization, won't we be doomed forever?" The Li clan's 2nd brother was livid. The Li clan's 1st brother was silent for a while. Then, he said coldly, "So what if it's the Dark Star organization? It's not like we don't know that Long Chen is a Purple Star emissary. However, we can't let 3rd brother die in vain. Hasn't the Gilded Rat clan always wanted to swallow us up? We'll just find an opportunity to do so." The Li clan's 2nd brother's expression changed, but he nodded helplessly. In fact, they didn't expect a Purple Star emissary to be so powerful. The Gold Gilt Rat clan had 4 human king realm experts, and they also had the protection of the God Wolf clan. Instead of being threatened by the Dark Star organization and contending against the Gold Gilt Rat clan and the God Wolf clan, he might as well beat them at their own game and throw away the 5 great sections. Find an opportunity to discuss with the Gilded Rat clan and try to reach a consensus. Even if the Dark Star organization appears, we must drag these 2 clans down with us. Just as the Li clan was planning how to tie the Gilded Rat clan and the God Wolf clan to the same boat, Long Chen and the 5 major sects were in an awkward situation. Long Chen was currently at the early stage of the Tao integration realm. He originally thought that he could reach the mid-stage of the Tao integration realm by relying on the 5 spirit veins. Then, he wouldn't have to fear the 3 human kings of the Li clan. However, with his current strength, killing a human king was his limit. It was impossible for him to enter the Li clan of the ancient barren land. The sect leader of the Wanjian sect and the others looked at Long Chen excitedly. They even began to integrate the people of the 5 great sects, including those above the divine transformation realm and many talented disciples, to prepare to head to the ancient desolate land. Long Chen, Yi Hailon, and the others found the 3 sovereigns and informed them of their concerns. However, the 3 sovereigns were stunned. The Wanjian sect master and the other 2 shook their heads and said excitedly, "We and the 5 great sects have nurtured this person for so long for the birth of a sovereign personage expert, someone who has the qualifications to enter the ancient desolate land. Although you are only at the unifying path stage, you are no weaker than a human king. Once we reach the ancient desolate land and pass the test with this item, we will be able to gain a foothold." The 3 sect masters looked extremely excited, as if they had been waiting for this day for a long time. Long Chen looked over and raised his eyebrows. The Wanjian sect leader was holding an ancient desolate land's ancient clan injunction order. This order meant that they were originally from the ancient desolate land. As long as a human king expert was born, they could return to the ancient desolate land, and the local ruling clan had to give them a foothold. Long Chen finally understood why the 5 great sects had been nurturing talents from all over the world and why every generation would nurture a saintess with the 1,000 extreme body. However, it was too difficult to produce a human king expert with the resources of the 5 great sects. Long Chen's appearance gave them a chance to return to the ancient desolate land. Long Chen frowned slightly. Although he had the combat strength of a human king, he had not reached the human king level. There were still many uncertainties in this trip to the ancient desolate land. However, Long Chen still nodded and agreed after a while. The 5 great sects no longer existed, and if he wanted to continue improving his cultivation, he had to go to the ancient desolate land. With the resources left behind by the 5 great sects, he only needed a few months of development to help the 5 great sects gain a firm foothold in the ancient desolate land. In that case, let's set off in 3 days, Long Chen replied. The 3 sect leaders nodded in unison. The 5 great sects had been waiting for this day for generations to return to the ancient desolate land. In 3 days, the group collected all the resources of the 5 great sects and set off for the ancient desolate land. In the ancient desolate land, the Li clan. When Long Chen and the 3 great sects set foot in the ancient desolate land, 2 human king experts from the Li clan soared into the sky with murderous intent. To enter the northern region of the ancient desolate land from the 5 great sects, they had to pass through the Li clan. The Wanjian sect leader and the others looked at each other. As if they had expected this, the ancient desolate land's injunction order in their right hand was crushed into pieces. Then, a mysterious and ancient formation grew with the wind and finally became 10,000 feet tall and imprinted into the sky. Almost everyone in the northern region noticed this scene. The 2 human king experts from the Li clan narrowed their eyes. One of them even shouted coldly, "I didn't expect the 5 great sects to have the ancient desolate land's injunction order. If we had known this earlier, we would have had another place to set up a spirit vein. These few days, we have reached an agreement with the Gilded Rats. The God Wolf clan won't attack us for the time being. However, since these people have come to the northern region, even if they have the backing of the Dark Star organization, they will be eaten by us until nothing is left." At the same time, all the great clans in the northern region saw the ancient desolate land's injunction order appear. However, after a short moment of shock, they calmed down. Although such an injunction order was rare, it would appear once every few decades. This was also a rule passed down from ancient times in the ancient desolate land. Any ancient clan above 7 stars could obtain this injunction order. Even if they were eliminated from the ancient desolate land due to decline in the future, once a human king expert was born, the ancient desolate land would give them a foothold. However, there were very few clans that made use of the injunction order to rise. Most of them were quickly annihilated under the oppression of other clans. After entering the ancient desolation, Long Chen and the rest did not continue forward. Instead, they waited at the border of the ancient desolation land. The next day, 3 human kings tore through space and appeared above the crowd. All 3 of them had several vine imprints between their eyebrows. The one standing at the front had a total of 5 dark green imprints. This person stood in the air, and the people of the 5 major sects all felt a great pressure. This power, which was as vast as the sea, far surpassed the king-level cultivators of the Li clan that they had seen that day. "I am the commander of the North region, a 4-star ancient clan, the Soul Ivy clan. All of you are holding a ban. You need to report your names to the ancient race's inheritors," the person shouted in a deep voice. The sect master of the Wanjian sect seemed to be trembling with excitement. He stepped forward and hurriedly replied, "We are from the ancient Shumi clan. When the middle-aged man heard this, he was taken aback for a moment before replying, Shumi clan? The famous five-star ancient clan of the northern region. Does your clan still have a human king who has awakened his bloodline? Chapter 280. Test of 3 moves. He had passed the return trial of the human king stage with his Tao integration ability. As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of the 3 members of the Soul Ivy clan suddenly sank. The voice of the person in the middle turned gloomy as he said, The Shumi clan was once a great clan, yet no one has awakened their bloodline. You actually want to fuse with the Tao and return to the ancient desolate land. All of you are wasting our time. As his voice fell, the faces of the people from the 3 sects turned green and red. Long Chen bitterly smiled and shook his head, then took a step forward. However, just as he was about to speak, illusory figures appeared in front of everyone. It was another 5 human king realm experts. Long Chen's pupils suddenly shrank, and his entire body was filled with murderous intent. With his divine thought, he could clearly sense that the chi of the 2 men on the far left was exactly the same as that of the Li clan's Wang. In other words, they were the other 2 human kings of the Li clan. As for the other 3 human kings, Long Chen did not recognize them. However, he vaguely knew that their abilities were definitely not below that of the Li clan's king. After the 2 human kings from the Li clan arrived, their eyes narrowed instantly. Their eyes were filled with coldness. Greetings to the 4-star ancient clan emissary. We are from the Gilded Rat clan and the Li clan at the border of the North region. The 5 of them reported their names. The 3 members of the Soul Green Vine lineage nodded slightly but paid no attention to them. However, the person in the center slashed the air with his right hand, and a spatial tear appeared. He said indifferently, Go back to where you came from. Seeing that you are the descendants of the Shumi race, I can give you another chance. When will a sovereign personage expert come to the ancient desolate land again? After saying that, the 3 from the Soulvine clan turned to leave. They had no intention of continuing. At this moment, Long Chen suddenly took a step forward and said in a deep voice, Sir, please wait. Since we have come here, we are naturally somewhat confident. I am the Unification Path disciple, and I am willing to take the Human King level test. The 3 members of the Soulvine clan who were about to step into the spatial rift suddenly stopped, and the expressions of the 2 behind them sank as they said, How presumptuous! The leader in the middle also frowned deeply. However, the moment he saw Long Chen, he casually closed the spatial crack and said in a deep voice, I can sense a powerful bloodline power from your body. It's really mysterious. Everyone, since they say that they have the qualifications to pass the test, then let them try. After all, there is still a supreme grade spirit vein area in the northern region. If they pass, they can settle down there. The 3 human kings of the Gilt Rat clan looked deeply at Long Chen and the others. Unexpectedly, even the 2 ancient clansmen from the Li clan chimed in. Since they're willing to give it a try, what harm is there in giving them a chance? I'd like to see what right this brat has to spout such arrogant words. A Tao integration stage cultivator can only be comparable to a human king. The member of the Soulvine clan stared at Long Chen and said seriously, This test is very simple. If you can take 3 of my moves, you can prove that you have the ability of a human king. If not, you'll die. Think carefully. The expressions of the people from the 3 major sects changed. This person made them feel endless pressure just by standing there. His combat strength was definitely not something an ordinary human king could compare to, and this test actually required them to take 3 of his moves. The members of the Gilt Rat clan, the Li clan, and the ancient clansmen were all stunned. They didn't expect the test to be like this. This Soulvine clan's emissary had probably already stepped into the middle stage of the human king realm. Even the 5 of them wouldn't be able to take 3 of his moves. The faces of the 3 major sect masters were a little pale. They couldn't help but cast inquiring looks at Long Chen. A smile flashed across Long Chen's lips, and he said indifferently, 3 moves. It's still fair. Please make your move. The 2 human kings from the Li clan looked at Long Chen, their eyes full of murderous intent. This was because they knew that Long Chen was the one who captured Li Qianye that day. He was also the emissary of the Dark Star organization, Purple Star. When Li Qianye was captured that day, the 2 Dao integration stage elders of the Li clan had told them all the information about Long Chen when they returned. The leader of the Soul Vine clan shook his head and laughed. Since you want to try, I'll fulfill your wish. If you die in 3 moves, don't blame me. Those who have nothing to do with it, back off 1,000 meters. As his voice fell, the human kings around all revealed looks of mockery and then retreated. The other 2 human kings from the Soulvine clan couldn't help but say, "How old is this kid? He can be considered a genius to be able to step into the Dao integration stage. However, he actually wants to take 3 moves from a middle-stage human king. He's simply courting death." The 2 human kings from the Li clan couldn't help but smile sinisterly. As long as Long Chen died, they would think of a way to make the Guilt Rat clan attack the remaining people of the 3 major sections. In this way, even if the Dark Star organization attacked, they would definitely not target the Li clan. As the distance between them gradually increased, the people of the 3 major sects were full of worry. Yi Hailon and Ao Tsangqiong frowned. The Soulvine clan was too powerful. If you don't die in 3 moves, you can enter the ancient Desolation Land. However, let me give you a piece of advice. Even if you enter the ancient Desolation Land with your strength, once the 3-month protection period is over, you will be completely annihilated, the leader of the Soulvine clan said as he shook his head. In his eyes, there wasn't even a human king. Even if he entered the ancient Desolation Land, he would only be a piece of meat for others. Long Chen shook his head and said indifferently, 3 months is enough. Sir, please make your move. Originally, Long Chen planned to destroy the Li clan and use it as a foundation to enter the ancient Desolation Land. Now that he had used the ancient Desolation Order, he naturally wouldn't let it go. As for the 3-month protection period, it was actually to give the returning ancient clans a buffer time. Once the 3-month protection period was over, the various clans could attack them and seize their territory. In fact, 90% of the ancient clans who relied on the ancient Desolation Order to return died in the carving up of the various clans 3 months later. Of course, there were also many cases where the ancient clans relied on their human kings to contend with the various clans and eventually remained as vassals. In fact, the Gilded Rat clan was one such case. The Gilded Rat clan had returned for decades. They relied on a human king to move between the various clans and were now vassals of the God Wolf clan. Seeing that Long Chen was still insistent, the leader of the Soulvine clan said indifferently, "My name is Hun Qianfan. Today, I've tested 3 moves to see if the Shumi clan can return." As his voice fell, a dark green vine whip slowly appeared in his right hand. As the vine whip moved, a dark green light instantly spread over 1,000 meters and covered the sky. First move, Green Vine Sunset. As his voice fell, the green vine in his hand turned into thousands of vines in the blink of an eye, covering the sky and the sun. It was like a huge green net that covered Long Chen. The streaks of dark green light on the net even cut the space apart. When the surrounding human kings saw such a scene, they all sneered and couldn't help but shake their heads. Apart from a human king, who could block this attack? Chapter 281. Standing ground. Long Chen looked at the sky full of vines and the cracked space with a solemn expression. This move was a divine-level martial arts technique that contained the power of the natural order. If one did not comprehend the power of the natural order, even a Dao integration pinnacle stage cultivator would not be able to withstand it. Long Chen held his long sword and soared into the sky. The spiritual glow on his sword decreased instead of increasing. However, it was covered by an invisible force. Hun Qianfan's eyes narrowed as he stared at Long Chen. Then, he stared at Long Chen. Long Chen soared into the sky like a moth darting into a flame. He charged toward the sky full of green vines. Boom, boom, boom. Before everyone's eyes, Long Chen's long sword and the green vines had yet to collide. The power of the natural order collided violently. After dozens of breaths, Long Chen finally charged out. At this moment, blood was flowing from the corner of his mouth. The green vines formed by the power of the natural order instantly dissipated. Everyone stared at Long Chen in a daze. The two human kings of the Spirit Green Vine clan behind Han Qianfan cried out involuntarily, "This brat!" He actually broke through the surface with a single point and forcefully dodged this attack with the power of the natural order. The expressions of the two Li clan ancient clansmen changed abruptly. They looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Han Qianfan was the only one who suddenly laughed with a face full of admiration. He said in a deep voice, "I didn't expect you to see through the intention of my move. It's really rare to use the power of the natural order to break through. This move is enough to show that your comprehension of the natural order is not weaker than an ordinary human king expert." Long Chen cupped his fist. He felt a sense of respect for Han Qianfan. His move seemed terrifying. If one were to take it head-on, perhaps even the other human kings present would not be able to do so. However, it contained a way out, and that was the power of the natural order. The first move was obviously to test Long Chen's comprehension of the power of rules. If his comprehension of the power of rules wasn't enough, he would most likely be smashed into pieces. It's rare for you to be able to comprehend the power of rules at the Wei integration stage. I'm afraid you've already formed your Tao body. If you're lucky enough to step into the human king realm in a few years' time, you'll definitely be on par with the Taoists of the Gu tribe. Why do you have to take the risk to enter the ancient, desolate land now? Han Qianfan spoke again, seemingly trying to persuade Long Chen. When the surrounding people heard this, they all trembled. Han Qianfan had actually said that Long Chen would have the opportunity to become a sovereign personage in a few years. Moreover, he would be in existence comparable to a Tao child. He clearly admired Long Chen's talent and potential. The two human kings from the Li clan felt a deep sense of danger. They knew of the grudges between them and Long Chen. If what Han Qianfan said was true, then Long Chen was their greatest threat. Buzz buzz, at this moment, the surrounding space was continuously torn apart. Human kings appeared one after another. It was clear that they were attracted by the power of rules. Is this the holder of the ancient, desolate injunction order? Why is he so young? Was he the one who was being evaluated just now? A burly middle-aged man with golden hair said in a booming voice. The other human kings also looked at Long Chen. They were all from the Gu tribe nearby. Everyone asked, "You were the one who launched that attack just now. However, you're clearly only at the Wei integration stage. How can you have such a rich power of rules?" Everyone looked at Long Chen in shock. They were not far away from this place. They could clearly see the two attacks just now and immediately tore through space. However, they did not expect that the person in front of them would be such a young man. Just as everyone was discussing, Long Chen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said in a deep voice, "There are still 2 more moves?" Han Qianfan's eyes flashed. He looked at Long Chen and frowned slightly. "I'll test your martial arts and spiritual power with the next 2 moves. If you're not a god king, you might lose your life. Are you really ready?" Long Chen nodded. He moved his sword slightly and signaled Han Qianfan to continue. Han Qianfan shook his head and no longer hesitated. He moved the vine whip in his hand again and shouted, "Divine technique, mind stealing." As soon as he said that, he waved the vine in his hand, and it disappeared into thin air. When it reappeared, it was within 1 meter of Long Chen. The vine whip danced like a long snake and instantly turned into thousands of whips with Long Chen as the center. They instantly wrapped around him like a cocoon. The surrounding human kings gasped. They thought that Hun Qianfan was indeed the ruler of the North region. They did not even have time to react when he attacked. In the blink of an eye, Long Chen was buried by the whip. Divine technique, radiant night. However, the cocoon-like whips shone brightly. In an instant, everyone's vision turned black. The glaring white light made the world lose its color. Bang! 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 The dark green whips shattered like paper. Long Chen's body was covered in small wounds and he was dripping with blood. However, he still said calmly, "This move is not enough to defeat me." Everyone looked at Long Chen in shock. The people from the three sects clenched their fists. As long as Long Chen could withstand the final attack, they would be able to establish themselves in the ancient desolate land. Hun Qianfan looked at Long Chen. There was no longer any contempt in his eyes. He said in a deep voice, "I didn't expect you to possess a divine-level martial skill. Moreover, it has reached the perfection level. This move. You're not weaker than me." Buzz. As his voice fell, he seemed to have acknowledged Long Chen's strength, and he disappeared from where he was. When he reappeared, he held a long whip and swung it down. Boundless spiritual light instantly slashed down as if it had materialized. The 100 meters of ground beneath their feet suddenly cracked. The golden core in Long Chen's body rotated at a terrifying speed. The spiritual energy around his body reached its peak. When the sword and the whip collided, both of their spiritual energies collided. Bang! Long Chen was blasted down like a cannonball. He landed on the ground and kicked up a cloud of dust. Did he lose? While everyone was still in shock, Long Chen's body was covered in lightning. His bloodline power was pushed to the limit as he slowly rose from the ground. Hun Qianfan's eyes were filled with unprecedented shock. Soon after, his aura dissipated. He cupped his fists at Long Chen and said in a deep voice, "I've underestimated you. With your strength, you're not weaker than a human king. From today onward, the Luo Yun Mountain, which is 3,000 miles south of the Divine Mountain, will be your base." Hun Qianfan took a deep look at Long Chen's body that was covered in lightning. He nodded and threw out a dark green token. Soon after, he turned around and tore open the space. Before he left, he said in a deep voice, "I hope you can keep this token after 3 months. When the ancient God mountain opens, I look forward to seeing you again." The lightning around Long Chen dissipated. He looked at Hun Qianfan and took the token. Then, he cupped his fist. The people from the three sects were stunned. Long Chen really did it. He passed the test as a Dao integration stage cultivator and obtained a place in the ancient desolate land. Chapter 282. Scarlet Assassination Order. The various ancient clan leaders looked at Long Chen with an inexplicable look in their eyes. Long Chen slowly walked back to the crowd of the three major sects and said, "Let's go. This is the foundation of the ancient desolate land." Long Chen subconsciously looked at the beautiful Yi Hailan. At this moment, he felt unprecedentedly relaxed. He knew that as long as he was around, Yi Hailan's 1,000 severance physique would never awaken, and her fate would change because of Long Chen. The various ancient clan members stared at Long Chen and shook their heads in laughter after recovering from their shock. Many of them, like the Li clan and the Gilded Rats, revealed greedy looks. The burly lion-like man was the closest to Long Chen and the rest. As he tore through space, he looked at Long Chen and shouted, "You are indeed a little strange. I hope that after 3 months, you won't be destroyed like those useless clans in the past." With that, he disappeared into the void. Then, Long Chen and the rest also left quickly. The Li clan and the Gilded Rats looked at the direction where Long Chen and the rest left and revealed sinister smiles. The 3 sovereign personages of the Gilded Rat clan said to the 2 from the Li clan, "Is this the reason why your Li clan compromised? He is just a young man with excellent talent. However, the Falling Cloud Mountain Range is a good place. Since the medallion has been issued this time, we will definitely seize it in 3 months." A cold light flashed in the eyes of the 2 Li clan brothers. They said in a low voice, This young man's talent is comparable to those Taoists of the hidden clans, but he has no background. The two of us are willing to listen to the God Wolf clan's orders in 3 months. As long as we can destroy this clan, the Li clan will follow the God Wolf clan's lead when the ancient sacred mountain opens. The 3 human kings of the Gilded Rats laughed and left, looking at the 2 Li clan brothers deeply. When only the Li brothers were left, their expressions were extremely gloomy. The second brother of the Li clan even asked in a deep voice, "We absolutely can't let this kid live. Although we can't make a move against him in these 3 months, we have to join forces with the Gilded Rat clan and the God Wolf clan to suppress him as much as possible. Otherwise, there might be unexpected variables." The eldest son of the Li clan nodded solemnly. He knew very well that Long Chen's battle prowess was not inferior to the 2 of them in a one-on-one battle. This made him feel a strong sense of danger. The God Wolf clan has the intention to unify the northern region, destroy the Soul Ivy clan, and become the overlord of the northern region. It's not impossible for us to submit to them. Even if Long Chen is related to the Dark Star organization, he must be eliminated. The Falling Cloud mountain range was like a gigantic coiling snake. It stretched from east to west, spanning 3,000 li. Long Chen stood at the foot of the mountain, and everyone was stunned. What shocked them was not the mountain itself, but the terrifying mountain peak to the east of the Luo Yun mountain that pierced through the clouds like a sharp sword. This mountain was known as the Eternal God Mountain. It was the most mysterious place in the northern region, and it was also the key to the rise and fall of the various clans in the northern region. This mountain seemed to have boundless magical power, attracting everyone's eyes to look at it. The clouds in the sky were like demonic beasts soaring and breathing, and the peak of the mountain was unknown. The strangest thing was that although this mountain had the shape of a mountain, it did not have a body. It was as black as ink, like an incomparably huge black hole, causing people's minds to be shaken. "Close your eyes." Long Chen's voice was like a loud bell that suddenly spread to everyone's ears, causing their bodies to tremble. They immediately withdrew their minds. Everyone's foreheads were covered with sweat, and they secretly thought that this mountain was terrifying. They quickly closed their eyes. Yi Hailan, Lui, and the others stood beside Long Chen and could not help but ask, "This is the Eternal God Mountain that they spoke of? This mountain is so far away, but it can actually frighten people's souls. What is going on?" Long Chen stared at the mountain, and the corners of his mouth gradually revealed a smile, as if he was not afraid of the strange power of this mountain. He said lightly, "This mountain is a good place. It is the place where the opportunities of the northern region gather. It has existed since ancient times. When this mountain opens, I will bring you all to seize an unprecedented opportunity." Hearing Long Chen's words, even the 3 sect masters could not help but be stunned. They knew very little about this mountain, and only knew that it was extremely mysterious. When Yanli heard Long Chen's words, she rolled her eyes at him and said, "It's not your first time in the ancient desolate land, and you know how to boast." Boasting. Little Master is boasting." Lui heard this and nodded thoughtfully. She pulled Yan Li's sleeve and cried out. Yi Hailan, Ao Tsangqiong, and Jian Shisan were stunned when they heard this. They immediately laughed out loud, subconsciously thinking that Long Chen was joking. After all, like Yan Li said, it was Long Chen's first time in the ancient desolate land, just like them. Of course, other than Ao Tsangqiong, after seeing the sacred mountain, everyone walked into the Luo Yun mountain range. Although this place was barren, its foundation was still there. It was obvious that other ancient clans had built here before. Under the orders of the 3 sect masters, everyone quickly began to reorganize. Everyone seemed to be extremely excited. After leaving the 5 major sects and coming to the ancient desolate land, they felt that their future was bright. The wide sea allowed the fish to leap, and the high sky allowed the birds to fly. From now on, everyone's goal was no longer the void returning realm or the way integration realm. Instead, it was the human king realm, or even the never-before-seen human sovereign realm. Long Chen stood on the east side of the mountain range and felt the continuous spiritual power below. There must be a supreme-grade spirit vein below. Unknowingly, Yi Hailon was standing beside him. The two of them looked at the setting sun but did not speak for a while. After a long while, Yi Hailon said to Long Chen, "Thank you. Thank you for leading the 5 major sects to establish a foothold in the ancient desolate land." With that, Yi Hailon turned and left, joining the people who were building the sect. Long Chen smiled. This peace made him feel at ease. However, he knew that this peace would not last long. It was not that easy to establish a foothold in the ancient desolate land. After mobilizing all the void-returning realm and Wei integration realm cultivators, the original foundation of the Luo Yun mountain range was quickly restored to its original state. Many cave residences were also gradually opened. There were even many people who could not help but sit down and cultivate. It had to be said that the spiritual power in the ancient desolate land was very different from that of the 5 major sects. After the sect was basically completed, Ao Tsangqiong found Long Chen. He took out a flagon of wine and said goodbye to him. Long Chen was not surprised. Ao Tsangqiong did not want to stay in the ancient desolate land. That was why he went to the north of the north region. Now that he had returned, he naturally had to leave. The two of them drank 3 cups of wine. Ao Tsangqiong left, leaving behind a secret order formation pattern before he left. Long Chen looked at the formation pattern and could not help but laugh. He muttered to himself, "You were unwilling and disdained to have anything to do with the Dark Star organization. However, because of me, you were unable to break away from it." Chapter 283. Sword Spirit. With the Luo Yun Mountain as their base, the 3 sects only took 10 days to build their own sect grounds. What touched the 3 sects the most was that Long Chen still referred to them as the Shumi tribe. The 3 sect leaders were still the ones in charge of the tribe, but Long Chen had already become the backbone of the tribe. In the following days, Long Chen and Yen Li spent more than 10 days setting up a protective spell formation. The spell formation used the supreme-grade spirit vein as the core of the spell formation. This month was very peaceful, and the entire Shumi tribe gradually got on the right track. The relationship between Yi Hailon and Long Chen became closer, and the 5 sects had already achieved their goal of returning to the ancient desolate land. Thus, no one cared about the so-called 1,000 extreme physique anymore. The 3-month period is the period of protection for everyone who has returned to the ancient race. However, after the 3-month period is over, I'm afraid that the ancient race nearby will attack us. By then, it will be the most difficult period for us. Long Chen said to the 3 grandmasters in a low voice. The 3 of them nodded. They also knew that if it weren't for Long Chen's existence, they wouldn't even be able to enter the ancient desolate land. Any Li clan lord would probably be able to destroy them. Everyone knew that although they had already achieved their goal of entering the ancient desolate land, they would need more powerful battle prowess if they wanted to gain a foothold in the ancient desolate land. Long Chen stared at the 3 of them. After a while, he said, "In the next 2 months, pick out 30 people who are at the peak of the return to void stage. It's best if they have a bloodline. I'll personally guide them in their cultivation for the next 2 months." Long Chen's powerful battle prowess and his numerous divine rank martial skills made the 3 sect leaders feel ashamed. It would be best if he could personally train a group of people. The next day, Long Chen gathered 30 people at the foot of the Luo Yun mountain. "For the next 2 months, all of you will come with me to the mountain range below the sacred mountain. The beasts at the foot of the mountain range live there, but it is also the best place to train," Long Chen said to everyone. The 30 people behind Jian Shisan stared at Long Chen and nodded heavily. Their eyes were filled with reverence. At this moment, Long Chen had become an existence akin to a god in their eyes. Long Chen nodded and led everyone out of the mountain range, heading towards the foot of the sacred mountain. Seeing Long Chen and the others leave, the three sect leaders looked at each other with worry in their eyes. They were very confident in Long Chen's strength, but it would be difficult for him to raise the combat strength of the Void Return Realm in 2 months. After leaving the Luo Yun mountain range, Long Chen led the group down the Divine Mountain. They gradually realized that the closer they got to the Divine Mountain, the louder the beast roars became. However, under Long Chen's lead, they managed to avoid all the beasts without any mishaps. Along the way, Long Chen taught them a supplementary cultivation technique called the Heaven Devouring Art. Long Chen did not tell them the grade of this cultivation technique, but everyone's expressions changed drastically when they found out. This cultivation technique was extremely terrifying for those who possessed a bloodline. The heaven-devouring art could devour the cores of beasts to increase the power of one's bloodline, and then guide one's cultivation. As long as there were enough cores of beasts and their grades were high enough, it could be said that they could directly enter the human king stage. Everyone stared at Long Chen, and their breathing became heavy. Most of them were at the Void Return Realm, and some of them had been stuck at the Void Return Pinnacle stage for a long time. If they did not encounter any opportunities, they might not be able to break through in their lifetime. Long Chen's supplementary cultivation technique was equivalent to opening up a broad path for them. After traveling for several days, Long Chen finally stopped. Split up into groups of 3 and kill as many beasts as possible. However, all the cores of beasts must be brought here in 3 days. Long Chen ordered. 30 people responded in unison. Immediately, they split into 10 groups and disappeared into the forest. Jian Shisan stood behind Long Chen the whole time. Long Chen stared at Jian Shisan and said, "You were born for the sword, but you don't have the power of a bloodline. For the next 2 months, I only have one request for you to condense a sword's soul." Long Chen's words caused Jian Shisan's pupils to contract abruptly. His cold face suddenly became excited. Sword soul? Jian Shisan was obsessed with the way of the sword his whole life. Ever since he was a few years old, he had always carried a sword with him. He had long heard rumors about sword souls. Jian Shisan stared blankly and said, "Is Master's words true? Sword souls really exist in this world?" The corners of Long Chen's mouth curled up into a faint smile. The long sword in his hand moved slightly, and the spiritual energy around his body suddenly dissipated. Immediately after, the long sword in his hand moved and slashed toward Jian Shisan. There was no spiritual energy on the long sword. Instead, a faint green light covered it, followed by a roar of anger. Jian Shisan was completely stunned. Long Chen's blade was already at his neck, but he didn't even have the chance to draw his sword. He could clearly feel that the long sword in Long Chen's hand seemed to have come alive. Long Chen didn't use any spiritual energy rules. He didn't even use any martial arts technique. Just an ordinary sword strike was actually so powerful. This is a sword soul? Jian Shisan's voice trembled a little. Even his eyes were bloodshot. His excitement was beyond words. Long Chen withdrew his sword and stood upright. He looked at Jian Shisan and said calmly, "Originally, you were only at the Void Return level. If you want to condense a sword soul, you have to at least step into the way of the virtual entity. However, I want you to do the opposite now. First, condense a sword soul. Then, use the power of the sword soul to comprehend the rules and directly enter the way of the virtual entity and even condense a Tao body." Long Chen's voice was like the evening drum and the morning bell. Jian Shisan never thought that Long Chen would actually want him to step into the way of the virtual entity within 2 months. In these 2 months, you will use the sword in your hand to travel through this mountain range. If you are unable to condense a sword soul, then you will not be fated with a sword soul in this lifetime. Shackles will also appear in your cultivation of the way of the sword for the rest of your life. Long Chen's 2 fingers continuously landed on Jian Shisan's dantian as he spoke. The energy around Jian Shisan's body gradually weakened. Soon, his cultivation dissipated in an instant. He was only left with the power of the spiritual martial arts realm. He did not ask for Jian Shisan's opinion because he knew that Jian Shisan would definitely agree. He knew very well what the two words, sword soul, meant to a person who was obsessed with swords. In this vast mountain range, even a person at the advanced stage of the void return level might not be able to survive. However, Jian Shisan actually left Long Chen with a sword in his hand and stepped into the forest without looking back. Long Chen looked at Jian Shisan's back and nodded slightly. This kind of Jian Shisan was worthy of being his disciple. Long Chen also turned and walked deeper into the forest. At this moment, he was relying on the comprehension of the rules from his previous life, the advantages of many martial arts techniques, and his powerful spiritual energy, which was comparable to an early-stage human king. However, he was still at the early stage of the way of the virtual entity. The sky-devouring incantation was also quite effective for him. However, his target was a demonic beast that was comparable to a human king. Chapter 284. Picking a fight. The northern region Divine Mountain opened randomly every cycle. Because of the existence of the Divine Mountain, many ancient clans in the northern region of the ancient desolate land prospered. Even the supreme grade spirit veins of the various ancient clans were inextricably linked to the opening of the Divine Mountain. Because of the existence of the Divine Mountain, many demonic beasts in the mountain range below were of extremely high grade. However, this did not deter the various ancient clans. There were many ancient clans like Long Chen who led their clans to train here. The crystal cores of high-grade demonic beasts were also a considerable resource for the various ancient clans. They could use these to exchange for many resources from the Alchemist Guild and other organizations. In the mountain range, the mournful cries of the giant demonic beast after its death caused all the demonic beasts within a radius of 10,000 meters to crawl. Many ancient clans at the periphery were shocked and said in a low voice, "Someone is actually killing a human king-level demonic beast. I wonder which ancient clan's expert it is." The various ancient clans' king-level experts are now preparing for the opening of the Divine Mountain. I wonder which clan's human king is so free. Alright, let's all stay away from here. Don't forget about the proper business. Everyone was extremely fearful of the person who could kill a human king-level demonic beast in the depths of the mountain range. However, they were extremely interested in the return to void cultivators at the periphery. The person who killed the human king-level demonic beast was Long Chen. Long Chen looked at the human lord-ranked demonic beast that was the size of a small mountain and shook his head slightly. This demonic beast was only equivalent to a level 2 human sovereign. However, it had taken him 5 days to kill it. Long Chen was deeply aware that his current cultivation level was still too low. His combat strength was still limited. With a shake of his sword, Long Chen picked up a scarlet crystal core from the demonic beast's head. It seemed as if there was a demonic beast's soul within it. Long Chen raised his hand and put the demonic beast's body into his storage ring. This demonic beast had scales and sharp claws. It would be a good material for the 100 Smelting clan to refine. Even its flesh and blood were comparable to elixirs for cultivators below the path integration stage. 5 days have passed. I wonder how many demonic beasts they've killed and how many crystal cores they've obtained. Long Chen leaped a few times and headed towards the rendezvous point. He did not choose to fly. Flying under the Divine Mountain would easily attract the attention of even more powerful demonic beasts, and the consequences would be unimaginable. The chirping of insects was incessant, and the scorching sun was high in the sky. It was noon when Long Chen returned to the meeting place. The Sumeru tribe had been waiting for him for a long time, but their faces were all ashen. Of the original 30 people, only 20 were left. Long Chen frowned slightly. It was expected that there would be casualties when facing the demonic beasts here, but 10 people had died in just 5 days. This number was unacceptable to Long Chen. Long Chen stared at the crowd and said in a deep voice, "How many cores did each of you obtain? Take them all out." As Long Chen's voice fell, everyone's faces became more and more unsightly. One by one, they took out the crystal cores from their storage rings. 20 people added up to less than 10 crystal cores. Seeing this scene, Long Chen's face turned completely gloomy. He said coldly, "What's going on?" A hint of anger flashed in the eyes of the people standing at the front. They stepped forward and explained, "After we arrived here, other ancient clans came immediately after. They all seemed to be targeting us. Yes, especially the Gilded Rat clan and the Li clan. Because of the 3-month protection period, although they did not attack us, with their Dao integration stage cultivation, once we killed the demonic beasts, they immediately came to snatch the cores." Long Chen looked at the crystal cores in everyone's hands. Before he could say anything, a rustling sound came from behind him. Soon, several groups of people appeared in front of Long Chen's group. "Yo, this Sumeru tribe has Dao integration stage disciples. A group of void return cultivators dares to return to the ancient desolate land? What a joke. Alright, give these demonic beast cores to us. Also, I haven't seen you for the past few days. You should have accumulated quite a lot." The groups of people looked at Long Chen's group with ridicule, their eyes full of disdain. Long Chen stared at them and sneered. "What if I don't give them to you? What are you going to do?" A Dao integration stage middle-aged man from the Gilded Rat clan said coldly, "Do you think you can be so arrogant in front of us just because you have a 3-month protection period? From now on, the Sumeru tribe is not allowed to come to the mountain range below the Divine Mountain. Otherwise, you might die here." As he spoke, he waved his hand at the people behind him. They immediately looked at him with disdain and returned to the mountain range. Soon, several demonic beasts comparable to Dao integration stage cultivators were herded here. The disciples behind Long Chen turned pale. They were all only at the return to void stage. These Dao integration stage demonic beasts were not something they could deal with. If Long Chen was not here, these demonic beasts would have killed all of them. A bunch of return to void stage trash. How dare you come to the Divine Mountain to train? Take these demonic beasts as a greeting gift. The people from the various tribes looked at Long Chen and the others mockingly and retreated. Immediately afterward, many Dao integration stage demonic beasts pounced toward Long Chen and the others as if they were being herded. The corner of Long Chen's mouth curled up into a sneer. The long sword in his hand was suddenly unsheathed, and a chilling murderous intent rippled out. The power of rules around him slowly dispersed. An invisible pressure instantly made everyone tremble from the depths of their souls. Gasp! Everyone was stunned. The Dao integration stage cultivators from the various ancient tribes who came to provoke Long Chen subconsciously retreated more than 10 steps. They stared at Long Chen in horror. "This kid? What's going on?" Everyone broke out in a cold sweat. They recalled the furious roars of the human king stage demonic beasts and felt their mouths go dry. The middle-aged man's face turned pale as he stared at Long Chen. You're the Dao integration stage cultivator from the Sumeru tribe, who's comparable to a human king stage cultivator? Everyone was in disbelief. Long Chen was far too young. He was only at the early stage of the Dao integration stage, but he was comparable to a human king stage cultivator. Long Chen didn't say anything. The 10 or so demonic beasts in front of him prostrated themselves on the ground. They were all intimidated by his aura. The dozens of Dao integration stage cultivators from the various tribes also felt as if their legs were filled with lead and they couldn't move an inch. Soon, however, their faces were filled with terror. This was because the demonic beasts were strangely walking toward them under the pressure of Long Chen's aura. What's going on? Why are these demonic beasts listening to you? Everyone turned pale with fright. However, they were so intimidated by Long Chen's aura that they couldn't breathe. Only a few people who had materialized their Dao bodies forcibly broke free from the power of laws and fled frantically. The demonic beasts charged into the group of Tao integration stage cultivators from the various tribes and started slaughtering them. Shrill cries could be heard from the various tribes. They couldn't fight back at all. No, no, spare us. We're from the Golden Rat tribe, which is a vassal of the Divine Wolf tribe. You can't kill us. How can this be? You're making an enemy out of all the ancient tribes. Seeing that Long Chen wasn't moved at all, one of the Golden Rat tribe Tao integration stage cultivators shouted, "Save me, save me! Spare us! We have something to give you. We also have a piece of news. Please spare our lives." Chapter 285. Divine Mountain Ice Pool. Long Chen looked at them playfully and said indifferently, "What news?" Long Chen was not interested in the things in their hands. However, since this person wanted to survive, the news would definitely be enough to move a human king powerhouse. The disciple of the Gilded Rat clan was covered in cold sweat. Without any hesitation, he threw a faint golden metal plate to Long Chen and begged, "I obtained this metal plate from the river left behind by the Divine Mountain. There is a broken map on it, and I can vaguely see that it's around here. However, I'm still trying to figure out the exact location." Long Chen looked at it and saw that there were several patterns of varying depths engraved on the incomplete map on the metal plate. Black tortoise, overflowing water, cauldron. Although the words on it were incomplete, Long Chen could still see what was written on it. This cauldron was actually one of the 4 great cauldrons, the Black Tortoise Overflowing Water Cauldron. Long Chen's pupils suddenly shrank. If he could find this cauldron, together with the Vermilion Bird Firecloud Cauldron, he would have 2 of the 4 great cauldrons. Although he was only at the Tao integration stage, he would be able to refine divine rank pills. This line of defense made him very excited. If he could refine divine rank pills, it would increase his cultivation to a whole new level. Long Chen's hand flashed and he put away the cauldron. Immediately after, the power of laws in his body surged again. However, he had no intention of letting these people go. Under the roars of a group of monster beasts, the people of various clans were slaughtered by the monster beasts. When the disciples of the Shumi clan saw this scene, they faintly felt a chill run down their spines. However, when they thought about the pressure these people had been under these past few days, and the fact that 10 of their disciples had died to the monster beasts they had driven away, they felt relieved. Long Chen looked at the crowd and shook his head slightly. Originally, he had planned to use this period of time to let these return to Void Stage disciples fight with the monster beasts to hone their martial skills and improve their combat strength. Now, it seemed that with the various ancient clans targeting them, it was impossible to succeed. With a wave of his sword, Long Chen beheaded the demonic beasts one by one. In a deep voice, he said, "Take out all of the demonic beasts' crystal cores, as well as the crystal cores on these fellows' bodies. After that, all of you can return to the sect." The 20 disciples nodded. Looking at the corpses on the ground, they couldn't help but feel worried. These people were all from the various ancient clans. Now that they had died not long ago, they would definitely attract more experts. If they continued to stay here and hunt for demonic beasts, they would only become a burden to Long Chen. Thankfully, after searching for a while, they discovered that there were quite a few demon beast cores in their possession. There were several dozen Tao integration stage demon beast cores, as well as 100 return to Void Stage demon beast cores. This was more than enough for them to use. After everyone bid farewell to Long Chen once again took out the light golden metal piece and looked into the distance. Although the map on it was incomplete, Long Chen knew the approximate location. It was not difficult to find it by relying on his powerful divine sense. On the other side, the Tao integration stage disciples of the various large tribes who had escaped returned with lingering fear on their faces. The higher-ups of the various large tribes all had ashen expressions. Soon, the human king experts of the various large tribes all took to the sky and rushed down the Divine Mountain. When they arrived near the Divine Mountain, the many experts who had died had no choice but to land on the ground. When everyone saw each other, their expressions were extremely ugly. Among them were the two Li brothers. That Long Chen actually ordered the demonic beasts to kill all the Dao integration stage experts of the Gold-Gilt Rat clan. We definitely can't let him go today. A Gold-Gilt Rat clan expert said coldly with a gloomy expression. A playful smile flashed across the lips of the two human kings from the Li clan. They said, "I wonder if it's your Gilded Rat clan, our Li clan, and the Fire Fox clan that have all died." Although this person did not directly attack, and did not break the rules, we can't just stand by and watch. If the Green Spirit Vine clan hadn't set a 3-month protection period for returning to the ancient tribes, we would have killed him with our own hands today. A human king expert with fiery red hair said with an unfriendly expression. When the two human kings of the Li clan saw this, they seemed to be in a good mood. They fanned the flames and said, "If he can drive the demonic beasts away, we can do it too. If the Shumi clan is annihilated by this beast tide, then don't blame us." Perhaps that Long Chen was unlucky and encountered several frenzied human king demonic beasts when he left the mountain. Naturally, he can only blame himself for being unlucky. As the two human kings of the Li clan finished speaking, the human kings of the various clans all revealed ruthless expressions. Immediately after, the human kings of the various clans actually split into two groups and disappeared into the boundless mountain range of the Divine Mountain. Tens of thousands of meters away from everyone, Long Chen looked at the Divine Mountain in front of him and couldn't help but frown. If he guessed correctly, there was a 1,000 feet deep pool in front of him. The pool was covered in ice and cold air rose from it. Not only that, but what made Long Chen uneasy was that half of the pool was located at the foot of the sacred mountain. Half of the pool, which was originally covered in ice, was now as black as ink, forcibly dividing the surface of the water into two areas. The cold attribute of this deep pool is extremely high. Although the map is incomplete, within tens of thousands of meters, this place is most likely the place where the Black Tortoise over Water Cauldron is located. Long Chen muttered to himself. The power of thunder loomed all over Long Chen's body, and scales suddenly appeared. He made up his mind and jumped into the cold pool. The bone-chilling cold instantly engulfed his entire body. Even though he had the body of the three-eyed thunder dragon, he only felt that his blood seemed to have begun to slow down. Long Chen snorted coldly. A faint flame actually appeared amidst the thunder and lightning around him, and the power of rules circulated endlessly. Under the coverage of his divine sense, the entire ice pool appeared in his mind. However, every time his divine sense approached the pitch-black divine mountain on the other side of the pool, it was repelled by a powerful force. Long Chen gradually frowned. It turned out that the entire pool was actually like an ice mountain 100 meters below the surface. Long Chen quickly approached the ice mountain. With a wave of his right hand, the vermilion bird fire cloud cauldron appeared out of thin air. The red light on it was faintly discernible, as if it was being pulled by something. As expected, the Black Tortoise over Water Cauldron is here. The vermilion bird fire cloud cauldron and the Black Tortoise over Water Cauldron were both part of the 4 great divine cauldrons. The closer the two were to each other, the stronger the pulling force. He rushed to the bottom of the pool at an extremely fast speed. However, he quickly stopped in his tracks. At the same time, he saw an extremely strange scene. A ball of azure flames was actually burning fiercely in the ice. On the other side of the flames, the shape of a giant cauldron was shockingly half-submerged in the divine mountain. It was as if a part of it had been swallowed by a black hole. Creak, creak, the flames flickered continuously. Not only did the surrounding cold energy not disperse, it became even more bone-chilling. Long Chen's eyes suddenly flickered. He lost his voice and said to himself, "This is the icy blue flame, a heavenly fire born from heaven and earth." When Long Chen obtained the vermilion bird fire cloud cauldron, there was the vermilion bird fire, which was a heavenly fire. Chapter 286. 7 colored heavenly flame beast heavenly flames were divided into living heavenly flames and innate heavenly flames. Innate heavenly flames were born from heaven and earth. The biggest difference between innate heavenly flames and living heavenly flames and ordinary flames was that they could coexist with humans. Everyone could absorb innate heavenly flames in their lifetime depending on their talent. For example, Long Chun absorbed 2 types of 4-star heavenly flames in his previous life. Other dominators were the same. Long Chen's body was surrounded by the power of laws. He slowly approached the azure blue flame. Even with the power of lightning and fire, his body was still covered in ice. Creak, creak. The azure blue flame emitted waves of soul energy. At the same time, the cold pond water turned into countless ice spikes that pierced towards Long Chun. Every ice spike had flames on it. The ice and fire seemed to be in perfect harmony at this moment. Long Chen's eyes suddenly turned cold. Countless lightning and fire surged in all directions. Ka ka ka. Everything within 100 meters of Long Chen turned into ice and covered him. The entire cold pool quieted down. Only the icy blue flame continued to jump, but it was unable to move at all. After dozens of breaths, a crack suddenly appeared in front of Long Chen. A third lightning eye could be faintly seen between his eyebrows. What a powerful divine sense, what a pure power of laws. You're a dominator of the heaven domain? At this moment a strange scene appeared. The azure blue flame actually spoke human language. Long Chen was less than 10 meters away from the flame. The power of laws between the two was extremely terrifying. Long Chen's berserk divine sense instantly swept in all directions, wrapping around the icy blue flame in front of him. He then sneered, "Come out? If you're really just the soul of the icy blue flame and don't have a physical body, you would have been killed by my divine sense." As Long Chen's voice fell, a body gradually appeared behind the azure blue flame. In front of Long Chen, a 4-legged demonic beast with 7 colored flames appeared. This beast's body was snow white and its eyes were like glass. The fire patterns in its eyes were like a net. However, if one looked carefully, they would discover that there was a terrifying wound under its abdomen, and half of its body behind its back was actually pressed under the divine mountain by the black tortoise over water cauldron. 7-colored mystical flame beast, I didn't expect you to be trapped here. No wonder. Long Chen's mouth curled into a smile, and a trace of shock appeared in his eyes. 7-colored heavenly flame beast. It was rumored that this beast had the ability to devour heavenly flames. Once it devoured enough heavenly flames, it would possess the battle prowess of a sovereign in his previous life. When this beast appeared in the heaven region, it attracted the attention of countless sovereigns from all over the heavens. They wanted to tame it, and Long Chen naturally participated. The battle that day could be said to have been a bitter one. The wondrous alien fire beast had been surrounded and killed by numerous hegemons. In the end, it had once again transformed into countless wisps of alien fire that had fled into the void. Thinking back to when this beast appeared in his previous life, Long Chen smiled and took out the light golden metal piece in his hand. He said indifferently, "I'm afraid you deliberately spread this item. If you hadn't lured me here, I'm afraid that even if a human king expert came here, their body would have been seized by you, and they would have left this place. If my guess is correct, you should have been here for no less than 10,000 years. In other words, you've existed since ancient times. However, under the suppression of this divine mountain, even your soul cannot escape." The 7-colored heavenly flame beast's sparkling eyes stared fixedly at Long Chen. It felt a deep sense of danger. Just as Long Chen said, he had thought of many ways to send out that light golden metal piece using the flow of water. However, in the end, no one was able to find this place. Even if they did find it, many people would shrink back in fear of the divine mountain. Especially after the icy blue flame had appeared at the bottom of the pool, the intense heavenly flames made even many human kings not dare to step into it. They were afraid of triggering the existence on the divine mountain. The seven-colored heavenly flame beast stared at Long Chen and said in human language, "Let me out. I can find all the heavenly flames in the world for you. I'm also willing to worship you as my master. I can easily help you devour the icy blue flame here." A cold smile suddenly flashed across Long Chen's lip. He said, "I don't like to make deals with creatures that have existed since ancient times. I only want to refine your divine sense. As for your body, I have no interest in it. No. I can help you absorb countless heavenly flames and become the strongest fighting force in this world. I can help you enter the deep mountains in advance and obtain countless benefits. Don't kill me." However, no matter how the heavenly flame beast screamed, Long Chen had no intention of stopping. The long sword in his hand was filled with laws and directly cut down the beast. If these words were said by others, Long Chen might have hesitated for a moment. However, coming from this beast, he did not believe it at all. In its previous life, this beast had transformed into a human in the 10 Directions celestial domain. It relied on lies to lure and kill countless powerhouses and even seized the heavenly flames from many sovereigns. As soon as the beast died, a dim light appeared out of thin air around its body. Its soul's eyes were full of resentment. However, the moment this soul appeared, it was as if it was suppressed by a divine mountain and was about to be devoured by the pitch-black divine mountain. Long Chen thought that this divine mountain was strange. Otherwise, this beast would not be trapped here. It seemed that even if it gave up its physical body, it could not leave. The power of laws in Long Chen's right hand floated and bound the beast's soul. Immediately, rays of spiritual light flowed out from his fingertips and turned into formation patterns that trapped the soul. Long Chen took a deep look at the black tortoise over water cauldron and shook his head. Nearly half of the cauldron was suppressed under the divine mountain. As such, he could only wait for the person who opened the divine mountain to find a way to obtain it. However, he obtained a glacial blue flame and the soul of the heavenly flame beast. This made Long Chen very satisfied. Before he left, he took out the 7-colored heavenly flame beast's demonic beast core. To him, this was not something a divine king-level demonic beast core could compare to. Long Chen put away the glacial blue flame and the beast's soul. He turned around and left the bottom of the pool. He did his best to use his elemental energy on this pitch-black divine mountain. After leaving the cold pool, Long Chen found a cave and took out the heavenly flame beast's soul. Indeed, after leaving the pool and the divine mountain, this beast's soul had extremely strong vitality even though it had lost its physical body. Just as this beast was about to say something, it saw Long Chen bombarding its soul with thunder, fire, and boundless divine sense. He wanted to erase its divine sense completely. Our mournful cries could be heard endlessly. The heavenly flame beast's soul gradually began to turn transparent. "No, don't kill me. I'm willing to become your slave and search for all the heavenly flames in the world for you. I'm not lying." Hearing this, Long Chen's hand froze. A cold smile flashed across the corner of his mouth. He said, "You're only left with a living soul now. It's good enough that you're still alive. You still want to trick me?" This beast hurriedly said, "Heavenly flame beasts are passed down from one soul to another. Once you refine my living soul, it will take at least a few thousand years for the next heavenly flame beast to appear. However, if you let me live, as long as you help me fuse with the glacial blue flame, I'll be able to transform into a heavenly flame beast again." Long Chen's eyes narrowed as he stared at this beast's soul. He said indifferently, "I see. However, I still have to erase your divine sense. I don't like to fight a battle of wits and courage with an old fellow who has lived for 10,000 years. Chapter 287. The Tao of Heaven. Numerous human kings traversed the forest beneath the divine mountain. The roars of countless demonic beasts caused the faces of the surrounding ancient tribes to turn pale. The roars of these demonic beasts continued for a long time, and they emitted a terrifying aura. They were all comparable to human kings. The newly established Shumi clan of the Falling Cloud mountain range was even more solemn. This was because the huge demonic beasts were gradually moving away from the divine mountain, and they were charging toward the Shumi clan like a storm of rocks. Yi Hailon and the three sect leaders' expressions changed drastically. Under Yen Li's guidance, the sect-protecting formation set up by Long Chen was activated. Everyone in the clan had an extremely ugly expression on their faces. This wave of demonic beasts was simply too strange. From afar, everyone could see that there were actually 5 human king-level demonic beasts. At the same time, the Dao integration stage cultivators of the various clans also leaped 10,000 meters into the air and saw this scene from afar. Immediately, they came to a realization, and a playful expression appeared on their faces. Without prior agreement, they all headed toward the Shumi clan to watch the show. On the other side, Long Chen was inside the cave. The divine intent of the soul of the mysterious fire beast before him had already been forcefully crushed by his sovereign divine will and injected into the glacial blue flames. This glacial blue flame's divine intent was in a state of confusion, and it should have been formed less than 1,000 years ago. Long Chen could easily control it by relying on his sovereign divine will and the power of laws. As the soul of the strange beast, whose eyes were filled with confusion, fell into the azure flames, Long Chen could clearly feel the spiritual energy around him being pushed back in an instant. Rumble! In an instant, the entire mountain he was in began to shake violently, and streams of almost tangible spiritual power rushed toward him from all directions like 100 rivers converging into the sea. The azure flames would sometimes expand by several times, and sometimes they would suddenly shrink. As it breathed in and out, there was a faint feeling of a heart beating. Long Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed, and streaks of lightning appeared on his hands. He reached out toward the glacial blue flames, and a boundless divine will covered his hands, forcibly suppressing the glacial blue flames. With the lightning pattern, Master Life Formation, fall. As Long Chen let out a loud roar, the silver-white lightning lines on his saber turned into an array formation and forcibly branded itself on the soul of the 7-colored exotic flame beast that was about to take shape. Seeing this scene, Long Chen couldn't help but smile. He never thought that the mystical fire beasts that caused chaos in the 10 Directions celestial domain in his previous life actually originated from the ancient desolate land under the primordial god mountain. And in this life, this beast could actually be used by him. In the blink of an eye, an hour had passed. A fist-sized rainbow mystical fire beast was leaping in the air like a cat cub. When he opened his eyes, they were filled with fiery patterns. On his furry neck, there were 7 dim flaming feathers that were completely out of place with the light blue fur all over his body. Long Chen was stunned. He never thought that the mystical fire beast would turn into such a small thing. It seemed that it would take a lot of time for it to grow into the mystical fire beast that had caused countless sovereigns headaches in his previous life. Long Chen casually stretched out his right hand, and the palm-sized mystical fire beast let out a low hum. There was a look of confusion in its eyes, but when Long Chen's eyes flashed with lightning, he suddenly felt a sense of intimacy from his soul. The little thing took 2 steps in the air, and climbed onto Long Chen's shoulder from his fingertip. It lay there with a look of enjoyment, and it whispered, "Do do, do." Long Chen felt a chill on his shoulder. With a thought, the beast turned into a blue light and condensed on his left arm, turning into a blue flame. As expected, Long Chen's brows showed a look of realization. This beast was really of the same origin as the mystical fire. Not only could it be subdued, it could also merge with the mystical fire. Long Chen couldn't wait to take out a demonic beast core that was equivalent to a human king. He immediately swallowed it, and a blue icy flame suddenly curled up in his dantian. This pill instantly turned into pure spiritual energy that swept through his limbs and bones. The violent demonic beast aura within it completely turned into nothingness. Originally, it would take at least several days to refine the crystal core of a demonic beast at the level of a human king. But now, it only took a few breaths. One had to know that consuming a demonic beast core was different from swallowing a spiritual vein. The demonic beast core produced by a human king demonic beast core contained extremely violent spiritual energy. Even Long Chen, with his great emperor body, couldn't directly absorb this kind of spiritual energy. The absorption efficiency was no different from that of an ordinary person. Otherwise, it would be extremely easy for him to lose his mind and fall into endless slaughter. The spiritual energy contained in a demonic beast core that was comparable to a human king demonic beast core was almost unimaginable. Most importantly, it contained a trace of the purest law origin energy. This was also the reason why almost every expert in Long Chen's previous life yearned for the mystical fire. It was because the mystical fire had this kind of almost abnormal refining effect. After the law origin energy and the endless spiritual energy merged into his dantian, the dragon soul in Long Chen's dantian spat out endless breaths. It actually swallowed the law origin energy. Then, one of the dragon's scales of the secret mother actually started to flicker. Long Chen was suddenly startled at this moment. With a thought, his entire body shook. There were a total of 3,000 scales on the dragon's soul. There were only 10 scales flickering with divine light, and these 10 scales were the number of law origin energy that Long Chen had comprehended in his previous life. People once said that the more law origin energy one comprehends, the bigger the shackles of the star. At this moment, I want to condense 3,000 law origin energy. Long Chen felt an unprecedented shock. If he wanted to break through to the human king realm, he needed to comprehend at least 3,000 law origin energy. This was simply an impossible matter. 3,000 law origin energy, choose one. 3,000 law origin energy, choose one. Heavenly Dragon Vein, Primal Chaos Golden Codex. Long Chen's eyes suddenly seemed to be filled with divine light. He shouted loudly, "I understand, I have the Heavenly Tao, 3,000 law origin energy, I know all of them. Condensing the law of origin energy is the Heavenly Dragon Vein." Long Chen had never been so excited and lost his composure in this life. After a short moment of surprise, Long Chen gradually regained his composure. Although he had thought this through, now that he had stepped into the Divine King realm and condensed 3,000 law origin energy, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. On the other side, the flame totem on Long Chen's arm emitted a pitiful cry. Do do do. The mystical fire beast seemed to have an unprecedented fear of the dragon soul in Long Chen's body. It actually did not dare to steal a trace of spiritual energy from it. Long Chen could not help but laugh. With a thought, he mobilized 20% of his spiritual energy to the flame totem on his right arm. However, just as he finished his action, a huge roar came from outside the cave. Long Chen's face suddenly darkened. His figure moved and rushed out of the cave. When he saw the scene in front of him, his entire face turned green. Not far away, there were actually 5 human king realm monsters rushing towards him. Behind them were 3 or 4 human king powerhouses using various martial arts skills to drive them away. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.